I declare this meeting open at 7 p.m. and welcome everyone to this evening's meeting of Ku-ring-gai Council. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. I extend that respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here this evening. As councillors, we are entrusted with the responsibility of representing the diverse interests of our residents. Let us work together in a collaborative spirit, respect diverse opinions and seek common ground for the good of Ku-ring-gai. Procedures. Before we begin, I'd like to outline a few procedures in relation to this evening's meeting of Council. This meeting is being recorded and webcast live on Council's website. Only councillors and council staff will be shown on camera. Attendees must not make a recording or photograph of the meeting without prior approval. Council meetings are open to the public as observers only, in line with the Code of Meeting Practice. Members of the public can address Council via the monthly public forum. Council may close part of the meeting to deal with certain confidential matters in accordance with Section 10A of the Local Government Act. These discussions will not be open to the public and will not be webcast. All attendees must comply with the Code of Meeting Practice and other relevant council codes, policies and procedures. Attendees must refrain from engaging in disorderly conduct, publicly alleging breaches of the council's code of conduct or making other potentially defamatory statements. Councillors, council staff and members of the public must ensure that mobile phones are turned to silent during the meeting. Councillors and council staff must declare and manage any conflicts of interest that they may have about any item of business on the agenda this evening. So I'll start with apologies. Are there any apologies for councillors? No, looks like you're all here today. Are there any apologies for staff, General Manager?
Madam Mayor, the Director, Development and Regulation is an apology and is represented by the Manager, Compliance and Regulation.
Thank you. Are there any disclosures of interest by councillors? Are there any conflict of interest declarations for councillors? No, there looks like none. Are there any conflict of interest declarations for staff, General Manager?
There are none from staff, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. General Manager, are there any documents circulated in the Council's papers to be dealt with at the appropriate time during the meeting, which we refer to as the Greens?
Yes, Madam Mayor, there is. There is Merrill Minute 2, the King's Birthday Honours 2026, dated 9th of June 2026. There's Merrill Minute 3, Alistair Henskins MP and Ku-ring-gai Council, dated 16 June 2026. There is GB12, which is a councillor request for supplementary information relating to Notice of Motion 1, Tolkien House. There is GB13, request for supplementary information from a councillor again, relating to NM2, Marion Street Theatre Redevelopment Project, dated 15 June. There's also confidential item C3, which is a preliminary heritage assessment report.
So are there any reports to be considered in a closed meeting and not released to the press and public, General Manager?
Yes, Madam Mayor, there is item C1, Linfield Village Hub confidential update, along with confidential attachments A1 to A6. There's item C2, project review, progress against action plan, with confidential attachment 1. There is item C3, preliminary heritage assessment. There are also reports with confidential attachments only. So for GB9, which is a request for tender, play space upgrade Sequoia Close Park, there is confidential attachments 1 and 2. For GB10, which is a request for tender for Pacific Highway and Beaconsfield Parade Linfield traffic signal modelling and detailed design, there is confidential attachment A1 to A3. And lastly, for GB11 DCP amendment to align with the state government housing reforms, there is confidential attachment 1.
Thank you, General Manager. Now, can I have a motion for these reports to remain in confidential? Moved by Councillor Taylor, seconded by Councillor Ward. All those in favour? That is unanimous. We'll now move to the confirmation of minutes. So we've got two lots of minutes, so I'll do them separately. We've got the minutes of the extraordinary meeting of council, which was on the 18th of the 5th, 26. So if I could have a mover for those minutes. Oh, sorry, Councillor Devlin.
Yeah, sorry, Madam Mayor, there is an error in the minutes.
Okay, on the extraordinary meeting of council, those minutes?
That's right.
Okay.
The minutes note that Councillor Smith voted for the resolution and that Councillor Spencer voted against the resolution. It was in fact the reverse.
Okay, so can we get that changed, governance? Okay, so we will vote with that change on those particular minutes. So these are the minutes of the extraordinary meeting on the 18th of 5th. So all those in favour? That is unanimous. We'll now vote on the minutes of the ordinary meeting, which was the next day, the 19th of the 5th, 26. If I could have a mover for those. Councillor Ward, seconded Councillor Taylor. All those in favour? That is unanimous. Okay, we'll now move to the mayoral minutes. So we've got three. Our first mayoral minute is a veil for Patrick Voon, Community Leader. On this occasion, I'm actually going to ask and call upon Councillor Spencer if he would like to read that mayoral minute out loud.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a valet for Patrick Voon, Community Leader. It is my sad duty to inform the Ku-ring-gai community and council of the passing of Patrick Voon, a long-standing local resident and former president of the Chinese-Australian Forum. For decades, Patrick dedicated himself to building understanding between the Chinese community and the broader Australian society. He worked tirelessly on issues of multiculturalism, racial harmony, and community representation at a time when these matters were often difficult and unpopular to raise publicly. Patrick was a life member of the Australian Chinese Forum. In fact, it is Chinese Australian Forum, CAF. Sorry, it's just printed wrongly. Serving as president between 2011 and 2013 and holding various roles, including most recently the position of treasurer. Among the causes that Patrick championed were: 1. The CAF complaint to the Australian Human Rights Commission concerning the racial hatred radio broadcasts under the Racial Discrimination Act. And 2, the CAF campaign to urge voters of Randwick City Council to support candidates who would protect the heritage-listed La Perouse Chinese Market Gardens, and also appearing before the New South Wales Legislative Council inquiry into racial vilification laws in 2013. In Turramurra, however, together with local MP Alistair Henskins convening a community conference responding to racism against members of the Chinese community. Through his leadership, Patrick also coordinated important community forums, cultural events, and public discussions which strengthened the voice of the Chinese Australian community across New South Wales. Many people saw Patrick's gentle smile, calm manner, and kindness. What many did not see was the quiet determination behind the scenes to ensure Chinese Australians were treated with dignity, respect, and equality under the law. Patrick leaves behind a lasting legacy through the countless people he helped, mentored, and encouraged, over many decades of service to the community, on behalf of Council and our community, I offer our sincere condolences to his widow, Patricia, and daughter, Alison, and his many friends.
Okay. Now, I've just got a slight change on the recommendation. So it's A, that the mayoral minute be received and noted. B, that we stand for a minute silence to honour Patrick Voon. And C, that the mayor write to Patrick's family and enclose a copy of the mayoral minute and the speech by Councillor Spencer. So it's just really adding and the speech by Councillor Spencer. So I'm going to move that and now call upon any councillors if you'd like to speak. Councillor Spencer.
Thank you. Tonight, I rise to pay tribute to the late Patrick Voon, whom I had the privilege of knowing for many years. Patrick was a long-standing resident of Ku-ring-gai and a respected community leader. He believed deeply in civic participation and in ensuring that the Chinese Australian community had a meaningful voice in public life. One particular act of Patrick's friendship and confidence has remained with me. CAF is a non-partisan organization. To my knowledge, it had never before written in support of an individual political candidate. Yet in 2012, when I sought Liberal Party pre-selection for the federal seat of Banks, Patrick, as president of CAF, personally signed a letter supporting my candidature. Patrick did not do so lightly. He understood the significance of putting both his own name, and that of CAF behind my candidature. He did so because he was prepared to stand behind those in whom he believed. I have never forgotten that act of loyalty, courage, and confidence. Patrick was not only my friend, I also had the privilege of acting as his lawyer. That relationship was founded on the same qualities that marked our friendship: trust, candor, and mutual respect. A week before he passed away, Patrick telephoned me on a Friday and told me that the treatment for his pancreatic cancer was no longer working. He was being admitted to the Royal North Shore Hospital that same day. Even then, he made me promise that I would not tell anyone among our circle of friends in the community. I asked whether he was in pain, and Patrick's usual understated way, he said, "Nah, nothing like that at all." I spoke with him again over the weekend and asked whether he was receiving morphine. Again, he brushed aside my concern and said, "Nah, not up to that stage yet." The following Thursday, my wife and I visited him in hospital. Patrick was lucid, but physically weak, and we still managed to share a few jokes. By then, I knew he was receiving strong pain relief. Yet Patrick remained mentally strong and continued to understate the seriousness of his condition. He told us that our visit had made him feel stronger. In keeping with his wish for privacy, I was the only friend from our community circle who had visited him. By then, I had also been told that Patrick had stopped eating. Before I left, I wished him a peaceful journey. The following morning, Alison sent me a text message to say he had passed away. That final week captured much of Patrick's character. He was private, dignified, and remarkably strong. He did not complain. He did not seek sympathy or attention. Even in his final days, he retained his humor, his clarity, and his concern for others. Patrick was a loyal friend, a respected community leader, and a man of dignity, generosity, and quiet strength. I will always be grateful to his friendship, the confidence he placed in me, and the many years of friendship we shared. To Patricia and Alison, I extend my deepest condolences. Wale Patrick, may he rest in peace.
Thank you, Councillor Spencer. Councillor Nye.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to just speak of my condolences about Patrick to his family. I haven't had the opportunity to get to know him as deeply as Councillor Spencer has, but I can say that when I first became a councillor in 2017, Patrick Voon was one of the people who reached out to me and shared about his organisation, the Chinese Australian Forum. He shared about the work that they did. Never once during the time when he spoke to me over the phone and in subsequent at subsequent events, never once did he try to push a political agenda. He was always looking in the best interests of a multicultural Australia, one where it wasn't just for white Australians or Indigenous or Chinese, but one where it was genuinely multicultural and supportive of anyone who calls this place home. I can see the influence that Patrick has had on other members of the CAF board and the wider community. I know that for each of us here, we don't know how long we've got to live, but one thing that I'd love for each of us would be for us to be proud of what we've achieved during our times here on Earth. And I can say that Patrick can definitely be proud of what he has achieved, and so my condolences to his family.
Thank you, Councillor Knight. Now I'll put that mayoral minute to the vote. All those in favour? That is unanimous. Now ask if we can stand for a minute silent to honour Patrick Voon. If we could all be seated. Okay, we'll now move on to the second mayoral minute, which is the King's Birthday Honours 2026. I'm pleased to inform you that 8 Ku-ring-gai residents, through their outstanding achievements and services to the community, have been awarded 2026 King's Birthday Honours. We are very proud to have these dedicated and talented Australians as members of the Ku-ring-gai community. I'd like to read to you the names of these special Ku-ring-gai citizens and on behalf of Council congratulate them on their excellent contribution to Australian society. Mrs. Bajinder Dugal, OAM of St Ives, for service to aged welfare. Dr. Kenneth James Facer, OAM of West Pymble, for service to medicine as a general practitioner. Professor Shiran Loshana Fernando, OAM of Wurrunga, for service to medicine in the field of immunology. Mr. Neil John McQuallen, OAM of Wahroonga, for service to the community and to the not-for-profit sector. Dr. Sandra Jeanette Nash, OAM of Killara, for service to music education. Dr. John Graham Toon, AM of Wahroonga, for significant service to urban and regional planning and education. Mr. John Langley, Wattsford OAM of Warrawee, for service to the rail transport industry. Professor Xinzang Zhang OAM of Gordon, for service to music as a violin teacher. On behalf of Council, I congratulate all these award winners on their outstanding achievements. Ku-ring-gai should be proud that it has so many citizens being recognised at the highest levels for their selfless dedication, commitment and contribution to local, national and international communities. I move in the recommendation that Council acknowledges the outstanding contribution made by these recipients of the King's Birthday Honours 2026 to the Ku-ring-gai community and to the well-being of our society. B, that the Mayor, on behalf of Council, write to the recipients to congratulate them. Now that I've moved that, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That looks like that's unanimous. We will now move on to Mayoral Minute 3, which I will read to you. I think some of you may have it in your papers. Alistair Henskins, MP and Ku-ring-gai Council. The purpose of this Mayoral Minute is to highlight recent statements in the New South Wales Parliament by the State Member for Wahroonga, Alistair Henskins, MP, in May and June regarding Ku-ring-gai Council. As Mayor, it is my intention to file a citizen's right of reply with the New South Wales Parliament, and this Mayoral Minute will explain what that means. Mr Henskins made lengthy statements about Ku-ring-gai Council's projects and decisions in the Parliament on the 26th of May and the 2nd of June 2026. Under parliamentary privilege, he also made allegations about and criticised 3 current and former mayors, myself, Councillor Cedric Spencer and Councillor Jeff Pettit. To be clear, the legal doctrine of parliamentary privilege is to afford MPs the opportunity to speak freely without fear of prosecution or being sued for what they say. This source is the New South Wales Parliament Legislative Assembly. However, the Legislative Assembly notes that members' freedom of speech can also leave members of the public vulnerable to being adversely referred to in Parliament without having an avenue to respond. The citizen's right of reply is a mechanism by which an individual or an organisation can request to either have a response to the comments published by the Legislative Assembly or incorporate it into Hansard, the official transcript of all parliamentary proceedings. This Mayoral Minute seeks a Council resolution to file a citizen's right of reply on behalf of Council. Before I address some of the comments made by the member of Wahroonga, I would ask all members of our community to pause and reflect why an MP would be so fixated on the management and decision-making of their local council. Some of the projects discussed by Mr Henskins in his statements to Parliament are not even in his electorate. I stand by my statement made to the Sydney Morning Herald, which raises the issue of alleged interference by Mr Henskins in the operations of Ku-ring-gai Council on the 29th of May 2026. That is, as Mayor, I am disappointed that a local state MP has chosen to undermine the carefully considered decisions of the elected council regarding major community projects. In both addresses he made to Parliament, Mr Henskins dwells on length on the perceived failings of the Council in relation to the following projects: the hockey field at Ku-ring-gai High School, the indoor sports centre at St Ives High School, Norman Griffiths Oval, West Pymble. Regarding the hockey field at Ku-ring-gai High School, Mr Henskins claims that the Council was awarded $2.25 million from a state government grant and then criticises Council for delays. However, the grant was actually awarded to the Northern Suburbs and Beaches Hockey Association, not the Council. The existing hockey field that was proposed to be replaced was located at Ku-ring-gai High School for nearly for nearly 3 decades, and the Department of Education was seeking for it to be relocated. Council, in good faith, agreed to assist in finding a new location. In the end, a suitable alternative was not identified, and the funding was used to renew the existing field at Ku-ring-gai High School. Council contributed approximately $1 million to upgrade the school car park. The construction works were undertaken by the Department of Education. Mr. Henskens is correct in saying that the indoor sports centre of St Ives High School was granted funding of $3.5 million through now the abolished state government Greater Sydney Sports Facility Fund. However, Mr. Henskens is overly simplistic and omits critical information in stating that the council rejected the opportunity to be part of the Department of Education's construction contract. To do so, the council would have had to commit to an agreement within 2 months. At that point, the council contribution to the project was largely unfunded. A capital expenditure review was yet to be prepared and submitted to the Office of Local Government for review. Risk allocation, legal and construction contract arrangements had not been determined, and arrangements for community use of the facility were not agreed upon. In addition to meet legal requirements and provide for community engagement, Council has received independent advice that the appropriate planning pathway to obtain consent for the project was via a development application. These matters could not be resolved within the short timeframe available to join the Department of Education construction contract. The initial proposal from the Department of Education only provided for community use of the indoor sports centre for a guaranteed term of 20 years. As Council acted prudently and did not commit to this arrangement in haste, community use was subsequently able to be negotiated for 50 years via a binding licence. Once Council and the Department of Education had agreed upon the outstanding matters, legal agreements had been finalised and approvals were in place. Construction of the project was undertaken by the Department of Education, not Council. Criticisms of Council by Mr. Henskens about delays and cost increases are unwarranted. Notwithstanding, the indoor sports centre is now a highly successful shared facility with over 90% utilisation by community sports and other users. It is a great example of what can be achieved when a council partners with the state government to provide a modern, multi-purpose facility to be enjoyed by generations of Ku-ring-gai residents and students. On Norman Griffith Oval, council decisions are on the public record, and Mr. Henskens, along with members of our community, can address the council on any concerns at the monthly public forum. Mr. Henskens has yet to take up that opportunity. I want to reiterate that the cost increase in this project are being funded by the council reserves, not the special rate variation, which was considered by council separately at this meeting. Mr. Henskens also states, other than at community events where council matters are rarely discussed, I have had virtually no communication, including about council matters, with any Ku-ring-gai councillor since 2022. I clarify that Mr. Henskens has contacted me and other Ku-ring-gai councillors about councillor matters on multiple occasions since 2022. Despite Mr. Henskens' address to Parliament on Ku-ring-gai Council as Mayor, I seek to work constructively with the New South Wales Government and local state MPs on matters affecting our community. This is evidenced by the work undertaken with the New South Wales Department of Planning, Housing and Infrastructure to implement an alternative plan for new housing in the Todd areas of Ku-ring-gai to preserve heritage and tree canopy. My door is open to Mr. Henskens to have constructive dialogue about how he and as the local state MP and the council can work together on matters of importance to our community. This is what I believe our community expect of their council and their local state representatives. The recommendation is A, that the council endorse this mayoral minute to file a citizen's right of reply on behalf of council, that the copy of this mayoral minute be forwarded to the member for Wahroonga. Do I have any speakers? Councillor Pettit.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to propose an amendment, and staff could put that up on the board. I'll give you time to read it.
So moving it,
Moving it and seek a seconder.
seconder.
I'll second that.
Councillor Smith, would you like to speak on the amendment?
Absolutely. Now, councillor, this wording is fairly straightforward. Our response is very simple there. We can share that with residents very simply. I don't think anybody in the community would know what a citizen's right of reply is, nor could we actually tell our residents what it is. This is basically the same sort of thing. We're putting it in very simplistic terms, generic terms, easy to understand. You see point 2, where we look to have a reset between council and the member for Wahroonga. We're not asking him to resign, but basically have a reset, have a think. Do you want to work with us or against us? I'm pretty sure councillors want to work with their state members, being Matt Cross and Alistair Henskins, and also with the federal member. We're asking him to have a think best, how best to deal with council, how best to work with council. Now, looking through this long minute, going back over the history of the world some 3 weeks ago, and am I worried about what he said about me in Parliament? No. Do I recall what it was? No. Did it affect my life? No. Time to move on. Maybe he was just having a bad day, a couple of bad days, who knows? But I don't think it looked real good. We have more people in the chamber here than he had in Parliament. So I think, make of that what you will. Maybe he was talking to an empty echo chamber at that point in time. Now, I don't think our residents are traumatised or fixated or worried about what was said in Parliament 3 weeks ago. Everybody's moved on. Guess what we're talking about now? The Socceroos. If you look at our member for Wahroonga, what was his latest post? He was wearing a Socceroos shirt. He has moved on as well too. So he's had his little tantrum or whatever. He's moved on. We waited 3 weeks for this response. Could it have been done quicker? Absolutely. As the Mayor says, my door is open. There's this thing on the desk. It's called a phone. Pick it up, make a call, and have a chat with him. Now, when I was Mayor and Councillor Ward was Deputy Mayor, we had a chat with him, didn't we? Come in, had a meeting. We had everything out in the open. No issues whatsoever. And that got off to a great start for the council team. So I appreciate your input as well, Councillor Ward, at that time. There were no issues whatsoever with our member for Wahroonga through that council term. So for whatever reason, maybe it's an election coming up, and he needed to get some brownie points, and bashing council is an easy target, isn't it? Everybody does it. Remember, we are the lowest level of government. The feds can bash us. The state members can bash us. What does it achieve? Diddly squat. Absolutely diddly squat. When our residents are looking to all levels of government to actually do the right thing for us. So that's why I've changed the wording to this. So you guys can go out there and explain what our response will be. That we're actually writing to the member, asking him these simple questions, clarify the facts, make any correction, and if he feels free, the things he might have said, we should take back, maybe do an apology. Nothing dramatic. And that's why I thought I'd put this forward. Now, I am looking for a bit of a reset and to get back with a relationship with our state members which is far more productive. We don't need state members coming down, handing out novelty checks and then disappearing. We want to actually work with them. I've been in this chamber for almost 14 years. I have not seen the state member for Wahroonga attend a council meeting or a forum. And that's not good enough. You know, if our higher up elected representatives want to work with us, then turn up, listen to the people, contribute to public forums, and get a feeling of what's in the audience. Don't stay at home. Come on down. So I hope you support this. It's very simple.
Thank you. Councillor Smith, you were the seconder.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm actually happy to support this. I think, as Councillor Pettit pointed out, the horse bolted 3 weeks ago, and that was the opportunity then to actually deal with the matter. I think at the moment, what was proposed by yourself was just something to file to rebut, which wasn't going to get us anywhere. And considering where we are today, and that we've moved on, I think it's quite simple and clear and a clarification of what it is, and we don't need to rub salt in the wound at this time. So for those reasons, I believe that we should be supporting this amendment tonight. Thank you.
I've just got a question for you, Councillor Smith. You do realise that the Hansard is incorrect, and in order to it is a permanent record.
Madam Mayor, if you look at point 2, if you read the amendment, it actually it gives him the opportunity to correct it, unlike the
it doesn't.
It does.
Doesn't allow us to do a citizen's reply.
Madam Mayor, we're not doing a citizen's reply. We're here as a council. That's my position. I'm acting as a councillor, not as a citizen here this evening. So for those reasons, I think that this amendment should be supported.
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Mayor Kay. I share the frustration of Councillor Pettit, Councillor Smith, and in fact yourself, Mayor Kay, with the members' statements in Parliament. I do feel like we should respond. I agree with actually all of the sentiments argued tonight, including perhaps responding in a more timely fashion. But I actually think we should be united on this tonight, and I personally have no opposition to also correcting Hansard with the right of reply. My request, suggestion for you, Councillors Pettit and Smith, is would you consider adding a point 3, which is the recommendation A from the original merit minute. So you're kind of replacing the B with your 2, and then adding a third, which is just to correct the record as well. And then we can all agree together to work on this and vote together and be united in our feeling towards the member for Ku-ring-gai. I'm not moving an amendment because we're only discussing an amendment. Effectively, I'm foreshadowing or asking you to include a change in this. So the recommendation is that Council endorse the Merrill Minute to file a citizen's right of reply on behalf of Council. So I suppose it would be that Council also files a citizen's right of reply on behalf of Council. That way we're covering all of our bases. Could I phrase it as a question then perhaps to Councillor Pettit and Councillor Smith?
Sorry, yes, I have a procedural.
Councillor Spencer.
So sorry.
No,
I don't have an issue with whatever you're saying. I just want to make a distinction. So council as a body cannot put a citizen's reply. A citizen is an individual. So later on in my speech, I will tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to put in my citizen's reply. Okay.
I just will just correct you on that council as a body can. You can do individuals also, which I also intend on doing, but council as a body can do a citizen's right of reply.
So thank you, Councillor Spencer. I appreciate your perspective and agree that we should get it legally correct completely. And really all I'm trying to do here is get a sentiment where we can all agree on all of us expressing our frustration with the mayor, not the mayor. Slip of the tongue there. With the member for Ku-ring-gai.
Councillor Taylor, I'm quite happy to add that point 3 into it, and I believe Councillor Smith might also be of the same mindset.
Very happy to accommodate. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Nye.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm glad that point 3 has been sorted out. From my perspective as Mayor, even if point 3 wasn't there in the resolution, you could have made a citizen's reply as Mayor Kay on behalf of Council anyway, because you're our Council spokesperson. So having said that, when I did listen to Mr. Henskin's speech, I didn't fully agree with everything that he said. I think what bothers me is that in whichever government we're in, local government, state, federal, we tend to grab key facts and then distort it and make big arguments out of it that shouldn't really be there. In this case, for example, he picked St. Ives Sports and he said, oh, it should have been 13, 14 million, it ended up being 30, that's council mismanagement. But if you look at the details, that's not the full story. There are reasons why in 2018 council could not proceed. It did not have the funding. Council actually had $100 million of restricted funding at the time, but due to the state government's framework, we were unable to deploy any of that $100 million to build something like this on short notice. Later on, when the state government changed its regulations in 2021 with the Local Government Amendment Act, we were able to secure the funding to build the St. Ives Sports. However, by that time, we already had COVID. We were in the midst of COVID. Construction costs had risen significantly. And also during the construction phase, we discovered that there was something called asbestos that was delaying the overall project, and there was a lot of time spent remediating what was there. Now, is any of that the council's fault? I don't think so. If the council is hamstrung by the state government on how money can be spent, then I don't think it's council that's at fault for not accelerating as quickly as the state would like. I'd love it if the state can work on freeing up some of our capacity in that space. And similarly, if there are construction cost increases linked to that, but they're increases that affect the entire industry, well, that's not council's fault, especially when the tender and the project management was handled by the state government. Similarly, if there's asbestos in the ground, that's not the council's fault. That's arguably, possibly the state government's fault. Someone from the state government 40, 50 years ago decided to put something where they shouldn't. But at the end of the day, these cost increases would have hit anyone, whether it was managed by the state, local government, the private sector. They would have faced the same impacts. The other element which really bothers me is that these things are simplified and then used to argue something much bigger. So former Minister Henskin said, you know what, like this is why the council is asking for a 29% rate increase. But that's sort of somewhat misleading from my point of view. The St. Ives Indoor Sports is only 1.46 million out of the entire rates increase, and it's only for 6 or 7 years. So it's a bit misleading to say, oh, because of council mismanagement, which wasn't even council mismanagement, you have a 29% rate increase. I think it's fair to look at the portion that each project attributes to. And in fact, IPART, in giving its determination, it said that we're happy to give you 24.6% special rate variation. However, you have to spend it on the purposes that you've applied for. You have to spend 6.7 on buildings and nothing else. You have to spend 5.9 million on stormwater and nothing else. So, and you have to account for it in your next 6 annual reports. So I just disagree with the whole narrative that, it's because of mismanagement that there's an SRV. No, there's a lot of other factors in place, and we should be working with the state to fix these. Thank you.
Councillor Cedric Spencer.
Thank you. Just a few things. So firstly, when Mr. Henskins made the first speech, I responded almost immediately when SMH rang me. When he made the second speech, I responded immediately as well on my Facebook. Not just that, I wrote to the Office of Legal Services Commissioner to lodge a complaint against him as an SC, whether his conduct was that I can't remember the word, but anyway, whether there's anything wrong with his conduct as an SC to talk about certain matters that he shouldn't. And that matter is now being investigated by New South Wales Bar. And I also wrote to the Speaker, and the Speaker has given me directions on how to put in my citizen's right of reply. Now, following on from what Councillor Pettit has said, I'm happy to move on, but I would like to see his response to A and B. If he's willing to work with us, I'm happy to move on. Life's too short, as we all know. But then if he's not going to respond, if he's going to hide behind parliamentary privilege, then I won't be moving on, but I will seek my own remedy against him. I do not require this council to support me or act on my behalf. I will find my own way around that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Spencer. Councillor Balachandran.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I thank Councillor Pettit for suggesting this amendment. For me, what I see as the main difference, the kind of substantial difference now with the additional C, is we are actually seeking a response from the member for Ku-ring-gai, which I think is important because he has spoken in public and I believe that some of the things he said were not accurate. It is important that we correct Hansard, so I thank Councillor Taylor for adding point C. The inclusion of that point is important. I have, as councillors are aware, I have sought clarification on whether the member for Ku-ring-gai was accurate in his statements in Parliament. I think we need to correct that. I do think that Mayor Kay, if she made a private right of reply, would not be able to speak on behalf of us as a spokesperson. So I think point C is important for all of us to agree on. In terms of the second point, I think it is very much included in the mayoral minute, which is seeking the member from Ku-ring-gai to actually work with us. So I don't mind how it's worded, so I'm quite comfortable with this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, as Councillor Spencer highlighted earlier, that we do have personal citizens' rights of reply, and as Councillor Spencer also said, I'm happy to move on, but I think we need to clarify irregularities and things that were said. So I will be doing a personal citizen's right of reply as an individual in relation to some of the statements made, one specifically that was in Hansard on the 2nd of June 2026. So Mr. Henskins stated, I believe that the reason Christine Kay has delayed the Norma Griffiths project recently is because she needs the votes of councillors opposed to the project to be re-elected as mayor later this year. This statement is false, misleading and damaging to my reputation. It falsely suggests that my position on Norman Griffith Oval was connected to a mayoral arrangement, political deal, or the need to secure votes from councillors opposed to the project. No such arrangement exists. There were no calls, emails, text messages, meetings, undertakings, agreements or arrangements with councillors Pettit or Spencer, or for that matter any other councillor, in relation to the mayoralty and Norman Griffiths. I'm also concerned that a Member of Parliament has chosen to involve himself in internal council matters relating to the mayoralty and to speculate publicly in Parliament about my motives without evidence. The mayoralty is a matter for elected councillors of Ku-ring-gai Council, not a matter that should be used to undermine my reputation in debate about a local infrastructure project. My concerns regarding Norman Griffiths Oval has been long-standing and publicly stated. They relate to escalating costs, governance, environmental risk, flood risk, procurement, community impact, and whether council has properly considered a lower risk natural turf alternative. The statement made in Parliament creates a false and damaging impression that my position was politically motivated rather than based on my responsibilities as an elected councillor and the evidence before council. I will personally be requesting that this response be considered for incorporation into Hansard on a personal level so that the parliamentary record does not continue to contain an uncorrected and damaging assertion about my conduct and motives. That being said, doesn't look like there's any other speakers, so I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? So, sorry, so we're voting on the amendment, sorry. So we'll vote on the amendment. All those in favour? That is unanimous. Okay. Oh, sorry, it becomes the motion, yeah. Oh, sorry, I'm just getting to that. You're ahead of me today. So that becomes the motion. So all those in favour? That is unanimous. You are? All right, so we're up to petitions. Have any petitions been received by councillors or staff? No? No petitions? Okay, general business. So I'd like to invite councillors to nominate any item on the agenda that they wish to have a site inspection for. No? No site inspections? Okay. General business, can I please ask a councillor to nominate any items on the agenda that they wish to adopt as per the officer's recommendation, allowing for minor changes without debate? Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Mayor Kay. I would like to move the following business items for voting on without debate. And I'm going to try to move.
Sorry. Before you start, I will need to move GB1. So GB1 is the Code of Meeting Practice, disallowance of the Local Government General Amendment Model Code, Regulation 2025. The effect of this is to revert to the previous Code of Meeting Practice. So I'll just move that before we continue. So if I'll move that. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Nye, all those in favour? Councillor Devon, you've got a question?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I had a quick question. Just to clarify the process for the rest of this meeting to be held, will that be held under the reverted scheme or the existing scheme about to be rescinded?
Will be the reverted. Thank you. Councillor Taylor, so back to the nominating any items on the agenda that they wish to adopt as per officer's recommendation, allowing for minor changes without debate.
Thank you, Mayor Kay. So I would like to move the following business items for voting on the staff recommendation with only minor changes without debate. And I'm going to move general business items 2 through 11 inclusive as a single block. And then also the memoranda and supplementary questions in GB items 12 and 13.
Withdrawing GB4.
Beg your pardon?
Withdrawing GB4.
Okay. In that case, Mayor Kay, I might just then reverse up a little bit. And I'm now moving items 2 and 3, and then items 5 through 11. And then the memorandums and supplementary questions in GB items 12 and 13. And can I at this time also move the confidential items?
Yep.
So then confidential items C1, C2 and C3.
Fantastic. Now, do I have a seconder for all those. So basically, we're moving everything other than GB4.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
And then, yes.
Oh, and the NMs, yeah. But this is general business, so yep. Okay, so a seconder, Councillor Ward. All those in favour? That looks like that's unanimous.
Mayor
Right.
Kay, may I please also move for voting on without debate NM1 with a very small change, if you'll allow it. And the change is to add 3 words to Part A, Part B, which is "and any income." So Part A, Part B calls for the operational and capital expenditure associated with the property, and I'm asking that we add the operational and capital expenditure and any income associated with the property.
Okay. We'll just
I'll withdraw that one.
Okay, withdrawn.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, he's withdrawing. Okay. All right. So we will now go to GB4, which is the post-exhibition revised resourcing strategy, revised delivery program and operational plan. Do I have a mover or a mover without debate? Councillor Pettit.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Staff have a new recommendation, if you bring that up on the screen.
Councillor Pettit, do you mind reading that out for me?
I'm sure everybody wants to listen to my wonderful voice.
Just might be the people online.
That Council adopt the revised resourcing strategy 2026 to 2036, revised delivery program 2025 to 2029, and operational plan 2026 to 2027, incorporating the budget, capital works program, statement of revenue policy and fees and charges for 2026 to 2027 from the 1st of July 2026 using only the 4.4% rate peg. The special rate variation SRV of 24.6% will be removed from the resourcing strategy 2026 to 2036, revised delivery program 2025 to 2029, and operational plan 2026 to 2027, incorporating the budget, capital works program, statement of revenue policy and fees and charges for 26 to 27. And seek a second.
Seconder, are you seconding it?
Madam Mayor, I'll be seconding this.
Okay. So Martin Smith seconding. Would you like to speak on this, Councillor?
Indeed so, Madam Mayor. Nobody around this horseshoe went to the election saying, I'm going to give you a almost 30% rate rise. If they had have done that, they would not have been elected. The residents of Commonara were alerted to a potential rate rise coming this term. And I had that in my brochure, and I think I had 17%. Nowhere in one's wildest dreams did we think we would be giving them almost 30%. I mean, people trust what you put in your brochure as much as possible. Sometimes you can do it all, sometimes you can't do it all. But certainly when it comes to giving large rate rises in a cost of living crisis is not the right thing to be doing. We now have a situation where the fuel excise will be coming, the rebate coming off and going back up. So that's another 26 cents per litre. So our residents will be hit with a whopping big rate rise, rising interest rates, rising inflation, rising cost of living across the board. Do we feel it's right that we contribute pain and suffering to our residents? I don't think so. Now, one of the things within the Liberal Party, they believe in lower taxes. So I'm going to be interested to see how our Liberal councillors vote. Do they vote for big taxes or not? Because that would actually be in contravention to what our state members have been petitioning, that council does not do this whopping big SRV. Now, councillors, it can be revisited. And I have spoken to a number of residents who were appalled at the large number. However, in those discussions, I said, what about if it was staged over a number of years? So maybe 4 or 5% over a number of years. Is that more palatable? And the answer was yes. So don't whack them all in one hit, but stage it. Can we revisit it? Yes. If you want a mandate to do this for a large rate rise, take it to the next election and we can formulate a referendum question which will survey the entire voting population of Ku-ring-gai to see what is acceptable to them. Rather than just what we've done is this period of consultation. And as we know, with consultation, the residents are somewhat sceptical about it. Don't ask me why, but they don't feel that when they do consultation, they get heard, listened to, and it's taken on board. We've seen the federal government, our Prime Minister, 50 times saying no capital gains tax increases. No this, no that. My word is my bond. So, I went to the election promising that I would oppose a whopping big SRV, and I'm sticking to that as much as I can, because I think we can do things a little bit different. Look how much money we've spent on things that actually haven't gone anywhere. $12 million on the Linfield Village Hub, for example. So we can do things a little bit better. We had the St Ives basketball, which we thought was 19 million, blow out to 30 million. Not that long ago, we spent $1 million trying to stop Bunnings. There's another example. We had Norman Griffiths go from 3 odd million to 20+ million. We now have the situation with Charles Bean, where in the business paper it says we've budgeted for 900,000. However, it could be another up to 2.5 million. Why wasn't that budgeted in the first place if we knew it was going to be over 2.5 million? There's another unfunded, whopping big amount of money that we have to find elsewhere. So councillors, have a think about it. Can we do this SRV better? Absolutely. So I would hope that you support this. There are a lot of residents out there on fixed incomes. This is a huge impost on them, not only on the residents, but on every business owner who is now struggling to make ends meet and keep the doors open. They're going to be hit with this massive rate rise, and that's unfair. If council wants to help promote small businesses, don't whack up their rates by a huge amount. It's just not right, is it? Would you like it done to you? I don't think so. So please, try and do the right thing. If you want to revisit the SRV, let's possibly do it as a stage thing. Revisit it at a later stage. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Mullins-Smith is the seconder. Would you like to speak?
Yes, I would. I think everybody here this evening knows that I've actually was originally in support to get this in front as far as it goes with the IPART, to look at what the costs are and so forth. During this whole time, we've had the Labor government that has actually impacted our residents of Ku-ring-gai greatly. We're probably we are one of the wealthier areas, yet we're actually got a lot of people that have actually got quite large mortgages. They've been hit with something like 10 to 15% decrease in the value of their properties. They've got petrol, which is going through the roof. They've got quite a number of things which are actually impacting them personally. I'm here representing what I believe to be the larger part of Ku-ring-gai that does require a little bit of a break at the moment under this Labor federal government, and that we do what we can do to make things better, as much as we can do in Ku-ring-gai. And one of the things we can actually do is just hold this back, look at it later. We can have a look at increasing it later on. And at the same time, this will give us the opportunity to pull our belts in. We all know that we've got assets there that we can sell. We've got one particular asset there this evening, which was worth a substantial amount of money, which would take care of a lot of problems. But there are going to be a lot of tough decisions that have got to be made by this council. We're all put in here to vote and make decisions to make Ku-ring-gai a better area. We've got an opportunity here to go through what we've got, what we don't need, and make some hard decisions that benefit the community. And I think, as a councillor, I think that's actually what I stood for and what I was elected to do. So I think with the circumstances as though the way they are now, the community that is suffering, the opportunity that we've got here now that we can actually change this, make some hard decisions, look at what we can cut back, what we can sell, what we can move on with, and it'll lighten the load for the community. So I think the community is expecting more. We've had here one of the biggest disappointments I've actually seen in here is Norman Griffith. It's, and Madam Mayor, you yourself, in this particular occasion here on Norman Griffith, have actually just parked it. It's been there for years. We're not moving on as a council. We can't just keep on deliberating and putting decisions off. Sometimes got to make a hard decision. If we make hard decisions now, this can help our community. So for those reasons, I hope we get the support here this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Sam Nye.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to speak against this original motion. I'll first talk about the SRV. The SRV has two purposes. First, it is to catch up on maintenance of stormwater buildings and footpaths as our LGA matures and these assets near the end of their useful life. You see, proactive maintenance is cheaper than replacement later on, but state-imposed rate pegs have meant that council couldn't fully fund the maintenance. Second, to accelerate footpath, traffic and recreational facilities that most residents want, but council has historically been unable to fund. So, for example, I note in Communara Ward, St Ives Ward, Woonga Ward, quite often the complaints are about the lack of footpaths, the lack of curb and guttering, all that sort of stuff. In the southern wards, it tends to be more about traffic and the lack of infrastructure to support population growth, and that's what we need SRV for. I do note what the Deputy Mayor has said about asset sales, and that's all well and good. But the problem is we have a structural underfunding of at least $16 million per annum. Yes, you can sell some assets, but that only puts off things by a year or two each time you sell. Sooner or later, you run out of things to sell, and you've got an even larger structural underfunding. And it won't be a 24.6% SRV at that point in time, it'll be much larger. I note that Councillor Pettit talked about bringing out to the community, having a referendum on this topic. Well, sure, we can have a referendum on this topic, but after a referendum, then we have to go through the whole process of IPART and everything. We're not going to have a potential SRV until 2030s, and by that time, council's assets will have deteriorated even more, that it won't be just 24.6% that we need to fix these assets. It will be much, much more. I'm going to read some other things that I've posted previously. So, for example, on election commitments. As a candidate in the 2024 local government elections, I put the prospect of an SRV front and centre of our brochure. I noted that our rates increases from 2015 to 2025 were well below inflation, that neighbouring councils had responded with appropriate rate rises, and that an SRV was likely in 2024 to 2028, but only after looking into cost efficiencies. We distributed that brochure to every Roseville Ward household and business at our own cost, so I'm not deterred to following through. I also note that during my time as a councillor, last council term, under Mayor Pettit, I moved a motion to look for efficiencies, and at that time it was shot down. Now, where are we at with efficiencies now? Well, since 2024, we've run various service reviews into development assessment, regulation and compliance, communications and engagement, sports field management, environment and sustainability, tree management, stormwater renewal and maintenance, and libraries. The outcomes are in the 2025 annual report and the forthcoming 2026 annual report. And I note that we've also got other improvements identified by the internal audit function. Now, while these reviews don't usually identify very significant cost reductions, they do identify faster and more accurate ways that free staff time to do other value-add work. So some of the improvements, for example, we looked at our stormwater pipe maintenance and we found ways to reduce it by over $100 million across the portfolio's lifetime. And without the SRV, we would have had much more than 24.6%. For development application turnarounds, we reduced from 144 days average in January 23 to 90 days in April 2026. And we also have a much more comprehensive community engagement matrix. I do acknowledge that there are impacts to families. In fact, my family is impacted too. I would hazard to guess that my family is probably the poorest out of the 10 here. But having said that, the impact of not doing it now means something much worse later. An analogy, let's say a tree cracked my roof tile, $20 to replace it. If I leave it alone, then a branch comes and $200 to repair. But if I don't replace that $200 cracked roof, missing tiles, that sort of thing, and the rain comes, it's not going to be $200 to repair it anymore. The roof's going to leak, my contents will be damaged, it'll cost $20,000 or more. And that's a situation that we as Ku-ring-gai are in. I don't believe in pushing it further down.
Thank you, Councillor Knight. Councillor Matt Devlin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The New South Wales Electoral Commission has a treasure trove of electoral material, and on the basis of what I've saved offline from the Electoral Commission, I'd just like to highlight that over the last 3 years, and I quote Councillor Pettit, then candidate for the 2024 election, noted that one of the 3 things he'd achieved in the prior couple of years were the upgraded sports fields at Norman Griffiths. He also committed to slashing councillor allowances, and I quote, no councillor wage increases. I've got a question to governance, if I may. Could governance
Probably have to go through the general manager.
through the general manager. Could governance through the general manager please advise who voted for, the councillors who voted for item GB5, which were to accept the remuneration determination?
Sorry, Councillor. My records indicate that vote was unanimous.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Councillor Alec Taylor.
Thank you, Mayor Kay. I will also be speaking against this motion. I do acknowledge the cost of living pressures in Ku-ring-gai and beyond, but I agree with Councillor Knight's statements on the benefits of the SRV, and particularly in addressing the chronic and structural underfunding of council over many decades by successive state governments. I just want to focus on one troubling idea that's wrapped up in this motion, the idea that asset sales can be used to pay the bills. That is not sustainable. Asset sales can be effectively used to fund renewal. We saw that, as Director Watson has said on several occasions over the last 4 years. We saw that as an effective measure for replacing older assets. And for example, we sold the old depot site in East Gordon to fund the new fit-for-purpose facility in Pymble. That is a fantastic example of using asset sales strategically and with a credible reason for selling. Paying the bills is not a credible reason for selling assets. I think we should really be very, very careful about throwing that statement around, and we should be focused on asset sales in a strategic way for asset renewals. Having said that, I'm now prepared to take one for the team and move an amendment, which is the staff recommendation.
Okay.
That's the
Do you have a seconder? Councillor Nye? Okay, we will now, did you want to,
I'd like to reserve my.
okay. Councillor Nye, you've got an extra 5 minutes? No? Okay. Anyone else would like to speak on the amendment, which is the staff recommendation? Councillor Balachandra, I saw you had your, okay, no worries, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. I'm still catching up on this procedure. We've gone back to the original motion as an amendment. I'm going to speak in favour of that staff recommendation, which is now the amendment. I heard the concerns in the mover and seconder sentiments of the previous motion, but the cost will only increase around us while our infrastructure decays around us. Council has kicked the can down the road for many years, and I actually agree we should be more circumspect about the scale of the increases in the future. 29% is a lot. I've actually taken lots of calls from constituents and heard their views. And I think we look at in the future whether we need to review SRVs every 5 years rather than every 15 years to be more scaled in how we manage this going forward. We can learn from this experience. Selling assets to fund operating expenses is just simply poor financial management. In terms of the capital works increases that are often quoted as reasons for increased SRVs, I think we need to be really clear that it is not the capital work increases that our SRV is funding, it's funding all our old infrastructure. Norman Griffiths, whether I like it or not, it is going to cost a lot of money, but it's coming from our reserves. The St. Ives numbers and reasons were in the SRV consultation, and we've actually delivered real community infrastructure, which is our job. It was not one of those projects that we spent money on and did not deliver. We went through an 18-month process to discuss, engage, and consult with community and look closely at our own financial sustainability as a council. Councillors were part of this and voted on every step in this process. And so for that, I'm going to support this amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Balachandran. Councillor Barbara Ward.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to ask a question, if I may, through you.
Sure.
Through you to the appropriate officer. My question is, prior to going to IPART, what was our reserves?
If I could pass that on to either the General Manager or the Director of Corporate.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Just to clarify the question, you mean overall reserves?
Correct.
In general?
Correct.
So at the end of last financial year, the reserves would have been about $190 million.
We're talking about cash here.
Cash reserves.
What is our reserves today?
Our reserves today would be, I'd have to double check at the end of financial year, but we would have spent the capital budget about $60 million. So I would imagine about 160 million. But I can take that on notice and clarify.
What is our projected surplus at the end of June 2026?
End of June 2026, I think we're projecting a break-even, if not excluding capital grants and contributions. So I'm eliminating the development contributions, and that would be a more break-even result.
Does that exclude non-cash items such as depreciation?
Sorry?
Does it exclude non-cash items
That
such
would
as
include depreciation as well.
It does. Okay, and that's showing us a loss. So having $100 million in the reserve, would we not be able to use that in some form to bring some of our assets up to date?
So, through you, Madam Mayor, we're already using reserves to fund our assets as currently. So, the special rate variation is proposed for renewing our existing assets. The reserve we used in terms of assets, we use to maintain assets on an annual basis. We also use reserves like development contribution to build new assets, and also a proportion of renewing, for example, on roads and other asset classes also come from reserves. So there is a combination of expenditure that we currently are funding from reserves already.
And that includes the contribution as well, as 711.
The contribution 711?
Yeah.
Yes, that's correct. So that is used to build new assets.
Thank you. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. Councillor Nye.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've got some questions is it through you or the General Manager to the relevant?
It's through the General Manager now.
Through the General Manager, probably to the Director of Corporate. So I understand that the vast majority of our reserves come in the form of developer contributions raised by new developments. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And I understand that in the proposed 24.6% special rate variation, well over half, if not almost 2/3 of it, relates to restoring aged buildings, restoring aged pipes, stormwater pipes, and fixing aging footpaths. Is that correct?
In fact, almost all assets proposed under the special rate variation are for renewing assets, existing assets, that is for stormwater, community buildings, recreational facilities. There's a proportion of new footpath, which is about $2.1 million. And there is also 1.7 million of traffic and transport facilities, in addition to a repayment of a loan for the St. Ives Indoor Sports Centre.
Okay, but yeah, so with the vast majority of it being on renewals, can we use our reserves in the form of developer contributions to repair these aging facilities?
No, we can't use development contribution to renew or maintain future assets.
Okay, and just one final question. If a council were to use its reserves on things that the reserves weren't restricted for, what would happen?
Basically, the reserves would be depleted, and there won't be funding for, I guess, future renewal of roads or recurrent services, but also assets.
Right, and is Central Coast an example of such activity? Or?
The General Manager.
Councillor, and I might just add, if we were to spend development contributions on items that we were not meant to, then we would be in default of the relevant acts and subject to some sort of action by the Office of Local Government.
All right, thank you.
No more speakers, so I will put the amendment to the vote. All those in favour of the amendment? It's Councillor Devlin, Councillor Taylor, Councillor Balachandran, Councillor Nye, Councillor Kay. I will use my casting vote for. Oh, sorry, against. Sorry, against. I was probably jumping ahead. Against Councillor Smith, Councillor Wheatley, Councillor Ward, Councillor Pettit, Councillor Spencer. Now I will exercise my casting vote for the amendment. So now the amendment will become the motion, and yeah, and Councillor Pettit, you do have an opportunity to sum up as you were the mover of the original motion.
Fantastic. Well, here's a pivotal vote this evening, isn't it? Whether to whack our residents with a whopping big rate rise or not. Now, Councillor Nye mentioned that I voted down his review. I'm happy to support it if you put it up again. Absolutely happy to do it. You put it up, I'll second it.
Yeah,
Excuse
relevant.
me, have we started the clock?
The clock, no, the clock
There's no
didn't
clock on
start. Okay, sorry.
Okay.
No, there's meant to be a clock, so if we could, it's okay.
Councillor
Councillor
Pettit.
Pettit, continue.
I'm glad that you were paying so much attention to what I was saying. Greatly appreciated. So, our poor residents going to cop it in the neck, aren't you? What a shame. I guess you can remember that in 2 years' time when you vote for them. I'm sure they will. Perhaps that big stick will come out. Those that look after the residents as much as possible have heard their concerns with their cost of living, how they can put food on their table, how they can pay their light bills, how they can fill up their car. But no, we're going to give you a big rate rise. Cop that. We've got alternatives, but however, we're going to bang it through. And you can't unwind this thing. It's going to increase it by a large amount. I don't think next year when the budget is presented to us, and hopefully before, and we get to have good input like we used to, when we'd have council workshops and we would actually discuss the budget, what we wanted going forward, rather than being presented it and then having to look through it all. That's the way it used to work.
Councillor Pettit.
I'm summing up. It's okay.
No, I'm just saying there's no new material in sum up, so if we could just keep it to point.
Right. You're saying the way it is. So I'm glad you're listening as well too. Greatly appreciate it. So remember who voted for the rate rise, who used their casting vote to give it to the residents with a whopping big rate rise. The casting vote. Casting vote probably should have been used the other way. Status quo. Vote it down and revisit it would have been the sensible option.
We keep the relevance there, Councillor Pettit,
absolutely keeping it very relevant.
because you can't go, you can't bring new material to the floor.
I'm just summing up. It's okay. Let me finish. It's all good. Simple. No rush. Although if we want to stop the clock and I'll continue on, that's all good. Now, I did mention earlier that in our Charles Bean, we have allocated 900,000. However, it is insufficient, given that it could be in the order of 2.5 million and counting, because this won't be done till a couple of years down the track. So you reckon 2.5 is the number? I doubt it. It might have a 4 or a 5 in it. This could be a small Norman Griffiths. And we could be known as the council that does a Norman Griffiths when it comes to projects. Do we deliver on time? Do we deliver on budget? No, we do a Norman Griffiths. So councillors, I appreciate all input, but our residents will know that 5 councillors stood up for them and said, no, we will look after your financial situation. We will not whack you with such a big rate rise. I would love next year that we all discuss and say, remember that rate peg? Might only be 3 or 4%. No, let's give some back to the residents. I bet you that doesn't happen. Just call me cynical, but I bet you that doesn't happen. Anyhow, 1 minute, 22 seconds, I was still going to get my money's worth. Keeps the gallery entertained. So it is disappointing that we couldn't get to 6.4. Or perhaps the Mayor had said to her St Ives residents, I don't think that's fair to give you guys such a whopping big rate rise. You had one councillor in St Ives that said, no, that is not right. And one that said, you're going to cop it. There we go.
Thank you, Councillor Pettit. So I'll put that to the vote now. All those in favour? Councillor Devlin, Councillor Taylor, Councillor Balachandran, Councillor Nye, Councillor Kay. All those against? Councillor Smith, Councillor Wheatley, Councillor Ward, Councillor Pettit, Councillor Spencer. The votes being equal, I exercise my right for the motion, which means carried. Okay. Now, we will move on to the notice of motions. So the first notice of motion is NM1, Tolkien House, Future Ownership and Long-Term Financial Sustainability. And that's by Councillor Taylor. So are you able to move? Yep. So if you, Councillor Taylor, moving that.
Thank you, Mayor Kay.
With that small amendment.
Yeah, as I foreshadowed earlier, I would like to move the motion as printed with a very minor change, which is to Part A, subsection B, to add the words and any income, where it says the operational capital expenditure and any income associated with the property over the last 10 years.
Okay. Do I have a seconder for this motion? Councillor Nye? Okay, Councillor Taylor, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Kay. I'll just speak briefly to this. To be clear, and I would like to be really clear about this motion is not asking staff to do any work on this idea yet. All it is doing is asking that we take this idea to the Heritage Reference Committee as suggested by the chair of the Heritage Reference Committee, Councillor Wheatley. I'm not proposing that we do the work on this idea yet. I'm just proposing that we take the idea to the Heritage Reference Committee as suggested by the chair of the Heritage Reference Committee. The reason I am suggesting this is I suspect that we could find a better custodian for Tolkien. We have shown over many decades that there is very little value that we can create for the community from Tolkien as the custodian, council as the custodian of this asset. We're planning to spend $800,000 over the next 2 years on this asset, including $500,000 on repurposing the asset as a museum, with, as far as I can tell, no evidence that anyone or very many people will visit the asset, and certainly not enough people to pay for $150,000 a year of ongoing maintenance. Maybe someone else can figure out a way of creating more value for the community. Maybe there is a potential custodian out there who can find a better purpose and use it in a way that is maybe an educational facility, I don't know, but let's just take the idea to the Heritage Reference Committee and see what they have to say about it. I'm not proposing we do the work at this point, I'm just proposing that we take it to the Heritage Reference Committee. I did float this idea with the ward councillors before submitting the NOM as well, but I'm happy to take responsibility for this idea. For me, this is about two things. This is about creating value for the community and being prudent with our money. I'm very nervous about spending $150,000 a year in perpetuity on this asset that creates little to no value for the community.
Councillor Nye.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, as we can see in the late papers for GB12, Tolkien House, which is under trust with Ku-ring-gai Council, has cost ratepayers including the budget for this year, it has estimated cost ratepayers $1.4 million over the last 10 years. And in the next 3 coming years, it's expected to cost a further $1 million. Now, this is not a small amount of money. We have been entrusted with caring for Tolkien House, and I don't believe that this motion here before us irresponsibly discards that care in any way. We are not breaching the trust. I would like to share one example of what I see heritage can be done right. I used to travel a lot for work. I used to travel to Melbourne a lot. I used to work at 130 Lonsdale Street in the Melbourne CBD, and that place is otherwise known as Wesley Place. At Wesley Place, there's a statue, there's a Wesley Church, there's some drainage channels, a former manse, an olive tree, and a caretaker's cottage. And what happened with Wesley Place was, just because it was a heritage item, that didn't stop development in the Melbourne CBD. Charter Hall, in collaboration with Wesley, was able to build around the site. And there's, I think, a 34-story office block on that site, while the church, the drainage channel, the former manse, the caretaker's cottage, that has all been preserved. In fact, in the case of 130 Lonsdale, a 125-year trust was established where Charter Hall gave quite significant funds so that for the next 125 years, these heritage items, which are highly valued by the public, could be preserved. But just because we are preserving something as heritage doesn't mean that we can't also provide for the residents and for the workers of the future. And so if you look at 130 Lonsdale Street in Melbourne CBD now, that's what you have. You've got development and you've got the heritage preserved for at least the next 125 years. Similarly, I see no reason why we can't do anything like this with Tolkien. The site for Tolkien, it's about 1,850 square meters. The floor space ratio on the Todd is 3:1. Without infill affordable housing, that's about 52 homes. With infill affordable housing, that's 67 homes. And I see no reason why, if there is a future development next to the Tolkien site, why the airspace rights of Tolkien can't be incorporated, why there can't be a transfer of value as a result of the airspace development rights, and why some of that funding can't be incorporated into yet another restricted fund, but that is dedicated towards caring for Tolkien. Whether that's cared for under council or under another entity, I don't really know, but I do believe that there are options to explore for Tolkien to ensure that it can be cared for at least the next 100 years. And that is why I'm supportive of this motion. It's not exactly worded the way that I would have wanted to word it. I'm sure there are other things to explore, but at least it starts a conversation. And as the Deputy Mayor said, we need to look into making tough decisions. And this is a tough decision without necessarily breaching the trust. Thank you.
Councillor Kim Wheatley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Could I ask that this notice of motion, Councillor Alec Taylor, if we could add in there, given that Tolkien House is a state heritage listed site, if we could also add somewhere, or H in there, is that we also seek advice from the state government in regards to their input as well.
Councillor Whitley, absolutely, sounds great.
Okay. I don't know.
I've just got a question for you, Councillor Taylor. Is the intent that this comes back to a council meeting with all these reports after it? So is there maybe a timeline that, I mean, maybe staff can better answer that, but...
So thank you. I do have an answer and also would welcome an answer from staff on that item. I worked on this with the Director of Community, and the intent was that it would go to the next available meeting of the Heritage Committee, which I believe has been scheduled, and that then in the minutes of that committee as they come back to council. So in the normal process of reporting on the Heritage Reference Committee,
it'll be in the actual
just go
minutes.
through. Yeah,
okay.
That was the intent, and therefore you wouldn't need to necessarily prescribe a timeline to it because it would follow the normal procedure of business.
But the only problem with that, and I agree
sorry,
with that.
Councillor Wheatley, just one person at a time. Have you finished, Councillor Taylor?
But the thing
Wheatley.
is that if we then have to seek advice from the New South Wales State Government in regards to the heritage, it's probably going to take longer than that, because I would want the advice of the heritage.
I might
Committee.
refer that to the relevant director to maybe provide some advice with the time frame.
Yeah.
Director
Madam
Watts?
Mayor, I don't want to put words in Councillor Wheatley's mouth, but if Councillor Wheatley wants to see a full package of 8OH before a committee, Councillor Wheatley may well be correct about not having a response in a timely manner from the State Heritage Office.
Councillor,
with that,
I've got Councillor Barbara Wards before you because you turned your light off. But are you okay, Barbara? If she goes, sorry, Councillor.
Yeah. Is that okay?
So, Councillor Wheatley. you
So
continue.
with that said, given that the next heritage committee meeting is on August 12, if I remember correctly, I would then speak with the committee. We would then ask a series of questions to the New South Wales State Government, and then we would have to allow for them to respond, and hope we would have that back by, if it's August, we would have it back by the October meeting. So may I suggest that if we could have it by the October monthly meeting, is a suggestion.
Councillor Taylor?
Thank you, Councillor Wheatley. That sounds fine. I would note, although, that part of the motion is missing from what is shown on screen right now, which is the final statement, which is that advice received from the Heritage Committee will be reported to Council once received, and expenditure on Tolkien will be limited to basic maintenance until Council has considered it. That has been printed in the papers. So there is a part of the motion which has been printed, yeah. So, but I'm very happy, yes, with the idea of it coming back to the October meeting if that suits council staff through the general manager. Perhaps I could raise that as a question. Does that timeline seem reasonable? This does not seem urgent, by the way. This is not urgent business. So, question through the general manager to the relevant director.
I just have one question, Councillor. At the start, you said that you didn't expect staff to actually undertake work until it went to the Heritage Committee. Is that because there's quite a lot of work in A to H is a lot of work if you would actually prepare that to discuss it with the Heritage Committee. Although the start of the motion, if we can just scroll down a little bit. A minute, take it. Would you mind scrolling down a little bit, please? Chris, can you scroll down a little bit? Yeah. It suggests that we're just seeking advice from the Heritage Committee on that stuff.
Yeah.
So we go here, Heritage Committee, what do you think?
Yeah.
As opposed to staff going and like pulling all that together is keeps someone busy for a long time.
Thank you, General Manager, for pointing that out. The original intent of this motion was not to create work for staff. It was literally to just raise the idea with the Heritage Committee. And perhaps, Councillor Wheatley, to your point, and agreeing with your point, that perhaps one of the things that the Heritage Committee could recommend is that we then seek that advice from the New South Wales Government. So if you don't mind, would we be able to please go back to the original motion? And I think perhaps we could ask the Heritage Committee to seek that advice, and that way we're not creating any work for staff on this particular motion. Are you also, have we included that last statement, the advice received, is it included in the motion? No. So there's a sentence at the end of the motion that's printed which says, advice received from the Heritage Committee will be reported to Council once received, and expenditure on Tolkien will be limited to basic maintenance until Council has considered it.
Under that.
It's in the printed motion. Thank you. That's it. So could you please remove H and I from the motion? Thank you. That's it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Are you happy with that, Councillor Knight? Because you were the seconder. Okay. Councillor Barbara Ward.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to know if, through you, if this was part of the Historic Houses Association.
I'll refer that to you, Director Watson. Oh, to you, Director of Community.
Through you, Madam Mayor, if I understand the question correctly, are you asking if it's managed by the Historic Houses Association?
No. If we are part of that, and if Tolkien House actually they oversee it or they've been involved in it in some way. No.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, the council has entered into an agreement whereby the Historic Houses Association manages Tolkien House. Any further details with regards to council's association with the Historic Houses Association, I would need to take on notice.
Councillor Balachandra.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As the ward councillor for the ward that Tolkien House is in, I support this motion and thank Councillor Taylor for running this past me. I also thank Historic Houses Association for their letter, which was very insightful for me, and to the residents and heritage volunteers for raising their concerns. I understand the value of public custodianship and do not think we at Council are necessarily delivering the best public value for this heritage asset. I see this motion as a motion to seek information and options that might better serve the heritage asset and those interested in it in our community, and then consider this information in charting a financially sustainable way forward for Tolkien that generates maximum public value for this heritage asset. Thank you.
Thank you. And are there any other questions or speakers? If not, I will refer to you, Councillor Taylor, as the mover. Did you want to sum up?
No, thank you.
No? If that's the case, I will then put to the vote all those in favour. That looks like that's unanimous. We'll now move on to NM2. Marion Street Theatre Redevelopment Project, Financial Accountability, Strategic Accountability and Community Mandate. Now this is from Councillor Ward. Would you like to move the notice of motion?
Yes, I do, Madam Mayor,
Yep.
as printed.
Yep. And if we could have a seconder, Councillor Smith. Councillor Ward, would you like to speak to your notice of motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My fellow councillors and members of the community, before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge and thank the many residents who have taken time to write to us. Their input is valued and appreciated, so I really do thank them. The motion before you as published is comprehensive. It is important to be clear from the outset that this NOM is a collaborative effort from several like-minded councillors, not solely myself. We bring it forward because the community deserves both the cultural infrastructure it has long asked for and the physical responsibility that good governance demands. For many years, I've worked consistently to progress MST project. Like many of you, I want to see thriving cultural centre, a place for theatre, arts and community life. I have supported arts and culture in practice, serving on boards such as Studio A, Marion Street Theatre for Young People, NAISTA, Contemporary Asian Australian Performance, and I remain committed to the value of these institutions bring. That commitment is why it is increasingly frustrating to see such a critical piece of community infrastructure remain stalled, largely because of ongoing funding constraints. We must be honest about where we are. The project's financial story is unclear and frankly incomplete. Early community estimates in 2018 suggested a 10 million build. A later quantity survey priced 249 theatre seats at 24 million. And today the projected cost sits at in excess of $35 million. Over 1.9 million has already been spent on investigations, design and planning. Yet there has been no publicly documented independent capital works benchmarking exercise that tests those figures against comparable projects or current market conditions. Building costs have risen significantly since the design was developed, and we do not have a transparent, proper reviewed cost plan that reflects today's market. This is not an argument to stop the project. The core argument is that any responsible commitment of $35 million plus requires an evidentiary foundation. We cannot responsibly ask this council or our ratepayers to proceed without clear answers to basic governance questions. What does it actually cost in today's market? What are realistic funding pathways? And what delivery models makes the project viable and sustainable? We also need to be realistic about Council's financial capacity. Council does not have unlimited funds. In the current financial climate, we must be disciplined and transparent on how we approach capital project commitments. Councillor Balachandran's principles stand at the last council meeting on allocating financial resources across large-scale capital projects, particularly where cost escalations were significant, was timely and appropriate. It reinforces the need for proper process, robust financial scrutiny, and genuine due diligence before we lock ourselves into significant expenditure. At the same time, we must ensure that governance does not become a barrier to delivering essential infrastructure. Strengthening oversight and accountability should enable progress, not stifle it. That is why NM2 has been developed by fellow councillors to strike a balance between accountability and progress. There are practical questions we cannot ignore. What is the point of keeping a DA valid when the project, as currently scoped, appears unaffordable? In fact, the question remains as to why Council embarked on this project when funding was never available. The DA is 5 years old. The context has changed, and continuing to spend to avoid a DA lapse risks giving false hope. It's ambiguous and, in my view, insincere to our community. For 13 years plus, community has been waiting. We are asking for a comprehensive report back to Council, a first of its kind, evidence-based review that clearly sets out cost with funding source, scope, delivery options, and long-term value. This report must be rigorous, independent, and transparent so Council can be informed, make informed decisions about the best path forward. Can I have
do you want a couple of more minutes?
Yes,
If I just put that to the vote, someone moves that. Councillor, no, she can have an extra 2 minutes onto that. So Councillor Wheatley, Councillor Devlin, go ahead.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The DA deadline in August 2026 creates a real pressure, but pressure should not force a false binary of commence now or lose everything. An urgent, well-structured review could strengthen the project's case for external funding by demonstrating physical rigor. Exactly the quality state and federal grant programs increasingly require before whole investment. We cannot continue down the same path and expect a different outcome. This is not about criticism of its own sake. It is about seizing an opportunity to do better with proper process, transparency, and accountability. We need fresh thinking, new ideas, and a willingness to challenge assumptions. We must be open to alternative approaches and work together to find solutions that truly meet our community's needs. Let us take this moment to reset, to apply rigorous financial scrutiny, and to plan a delivery model that is realistic, fundable, and delivers long-term value. Ultimately, the community expects us to deliver critical infrastructure, but to do so responsibly. That is exactly what we are aiming to achieve. I remain hopeful that following a thorough review, we will be able to share positive news and a credible pathway to deliver a cultural centre that serves our community for generations. I urge my fellow councillors to please consider the wait of 13 years and support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. Councillor Smith, as the seconder, would you like to speak?
Yes, Madam Mayor. I might actually just ask a couple of questions before I speak to it, if I may. Madam Mayor, through you to Director Watson, can we confirm the heritage status of this existing building and identify precisely which elements are protected?
Through you, Madam Mayor, it's not a heritage listed property.
Thank you. So Marion Street Theatre itself is not heritage listed, or does it represent a series of historical uses and memories associated with the site?
Is that a question?
Yeah, it is a question.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'm not aware of any study the Council's done in the last 15 or so years that hasn't acknowledged the social significance of the building to a reasonably wide base in the community. Yep. But it's not a listed heritage building. But certainly, a lot of people would recognise social significance.
Yeah. The final question will be: can future arts and cultural infrastructure be successfully integrated into emerging centres experiencing significant population growth?
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, that's always been Council's plan.
Okay. All right. I'm actually in support of this motion Councillor Ward put up. It's actually a very difficult motion to put forward because we're dealing with an emotional issue. And there are councillors here this evening that are emotionally attached to it, which I respect and I understand that. I think going back on GB4 in regarding the costs and what the impact is on the community, this is one of the hard decisions this council needs to make. We've got to look at how much more are we going to throw at the community? How much more are they expected to pay for something of $35 million, which really, it's not my understanding, well, not my understanding, I believe with my own research, that it's not even really allocated into the right place. You've got a place which is 3.6 kilometres away called Ku-ring-gai Theatre, which has got 685 seats. designed to accommodate large-scale productions and performances. It's available for hire. The venue is ideal for music, concerts, and dance performances. The building features modern lighting, sound equipment, along with very comfortable seating as well as flexible staging options. Now, being a business owner myself, I don't particularly like the idea of council funding a project to go up against another business. We, in actual fact, here tonight would be better. It would be cheaper for us to literally pay for the hire for the people at Marion Street Theatre. It's cheaper. We're talking about a $35 million outlay. Like, we've just, Madam Mayor, you've literally pushed the rate rise of 29% through to the residents of Ku-ring-gai. And now further, we're looking at here, we're talking about a $35 million project where we've got another site which is 3.6 kilometres away, and it's not suitable. We've got an asset there that's worth $30 million plus that this council, again, is what I'm saying, and that I'm actually getting to the point of frustration, won't make the hard decisions. Like, yes, I understand we've got a group of people that identify with it, but the reality is, can this council afford it? And then say to the same residents, oh, by the way, we'll give you a 29% increase. We've got to make some hard decisions here today. So for those reasons, I think what Councillor Ward has put forward is admirable. It's difficult when you cop the emails and all the rest of it about, you know, that these people want it. The honest truth is there's not that many people around the area. We're getting emails from, I was looking at from Queensland and everywhere else, which I appreciate the fact that, you know, that arts and culture will stick together. But what I'm saying to the councillors here this evening, we've got a place that's 3.6 kilometres away with great seating that can accommodate these people, and we've got other schools and places can be used as well. But we're here this evening literally having to make a decision that affects the whole of Ku-ring-gai off the back of this SRV that we just inflicted them. So for those reasons, I hope that we get full support tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Sam Nye. Oh, sorry, Councillor Indu Balachandran.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Let's take all the hysterical emotion that Councillor Smith thinks is going to happen and look at the numbers. Perhaps if just my first question might be back to Councillor Smith before I forget. What evidence does Councillor Smith have on how many of the emails came from local residents, other than the anecdotal number that you just said kept coming from Queensland? Because I looked.
I'll just check with Councillor Smith if it's okay to answer that question.
I did get an email from somebody that was from Queensland, had as their residence. And sorry, would you? There's you want a copy of it? Is that?
No. I want to. The question was, what proportion of the emails came from local residents?
It got to the point where I understand that we're aware. We went out there. We did a public survey of how important it was to the residents of Ku-ring-gai and whether or not they wanted to incorporate that into this rate hike. They chose not to.
Could you answer the question, please? What proportion of the emails?
Can we not debate
I didn't actually sit down and analyse.
Councillor Smith, can we talk one at a time? And if the gallery wouldn't mind being quiet. So,
okay.
Thank you.
So my point is we don't know how many of the emails came from within or outside the Ku-ring-gai Council. Question for you, Madam Mayor, to staff now. I did want to ask, and I saw it came in the papers as a late item, how much is the construction cost to save the DA likely to be? I understand it's $100,000 according to what came through in the papers.
Through the Director of Operations?
Through you, Madam Mayor, that's correct.
Okay. So the current budgeted expense and the anticipated actual expense that is approved for this project is not $30 million or anything like that. We're looking at $100,000 at this point in time.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the approved budget to activate the DA is about 30 something, but the actual works are, as
Is
mentioned.
much less. Thank you. How much have we spent on developing this project since the theatre closed in 2013? I understand it's about $1.9 million.
General Manager, would you like to, Director Corporate will take that one.
Through you, Madam Mayor, it's about 1.7 million.
Thank you. I also want to confirm that the cost is not for a single 249-seat theatre, as Barbara Ward might have suggested. Sorry, Councillor Ward, my apologies. I understand there are multiple distinct spaces, so it's not for a single theatre. There are 2 theatres, a music space, an exhibition space, a cafe, and an amphitheatre. Can you just someone confirm the design strategy?
Through you, Madam Mayor, that's correct.
Thank you. Also, what is our latest estimate of costs? It was quoted earlier that was $35 million.
Through you, Madam Mayor, that's correct. That is an October 2024 quantity surveyor's report. There would have been some escalation into that report, and the report assumes almost immediate start to construction. And now, if you apply some normalised indexation rates for that 18-month period, you might add in the order of somewhere between 4 and 6% per annum. So a figure somewhere between $32 and $33 million.
Thank you. If the DA lapses, what is the timeline for delivery of an alternative multi-purpose performance space? Is it possible in the next 5 to 10 years?
General Manager?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It would be possible to get another DA on that particular site, which might take, depending if you kept with the current design and renewed it or you've tweaked it, but that might take 6 to 12 months to come up with the new plans and design, and say 6 months for a DA. So that might be set us back a couple of years. But if the site was abandoned and with the idea to put it somewhere else, well, it really depends on where that is. So we don't currently have plans of it, obviously, for a theatre. There's lots of ideas, but nothing in place. So yes, it would be many years away before an alternate was built.
Thank you. So with point F, just regarding the notice of motion, are we asking residents in the survey for comparative information on costs of alternative delivery models? Would this be something that our residents would have?
Are you asking Councillor Barbara Ward, who wrote the motion?
Anyone who wants to take the question are we asking residents for comparative information on costs of alternative delivery?
No, we're asking an independent person to do that.
Point F again. As per the current motion, if we do the representative survey and residents indicate a preference for the redevelopment of the Marion Street Arts Centre, if the DA was allowed to lapse, what would we do then if that's what our residents wanted?
General Manager?
Madam Mayor, it would be up to council, but an option would be to relodge the plans through a DA.
Okay, so it's a few years then again to start the process. Like you said, 24 months if we get the DA. There's no guarantee that the DA will get approved. Is that correct?
Through you, Madam Mayor, that is correct, yes. In the material today,
yes, I saw that.
There is things have changed obviously in the passage of time, and so it's not guaranteed that the same factors would come into play in the assessment of a DA.
With point H, it seems to suggest we do a CapEx review before we have a funded project. Can someone on staff please just walk us through the trigger and timeline typically for a CapEx review through the Office of Local Government? And has Council ever opted out of this previously for projects?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Normally we would do a capital expenditure review once we're reasonably progressed down the path and we had a funding strategy in place. Because a key part of the capital expenditure review is the funding. Now, I'm just looking.
We wouldn't need to prescribe that we do a CapEx review. It would be something that council would do typically for large projects.
Look, through you, Madam Mayor. That's true. At the appropriate time, we would do that. I think H is also prescribing items 1 to 7, which may not be exactly what's in the capital expenditure review. So I guess the writer of the motion was communicating that they want those specific things to be included.
Okay. Regarding the operating subsidy, one of my fellow councillors did ask me to look into the operating subsidy that is modelled to support the new arts centre, which is around 700K. Can staff please confirm that operating subsidies are common for councils to support public value being generated by community asset? I mean, I support subsidies by council, whether it's in sports or arts. I understand we do subsidise other assets as well. Can you confirm that?
Director of Corporate, would you like to answer that question?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, that is common for major projects. We do model an operating subsidy, and as well as life cycle costing.
I was keen to understand what some of the other subsidies are. So I was just looking and I asked after some some other assets. Can staff please advise what the operating subsidy was for Gordon Golf Course in financial year 25?
Through you, Madam Mayor.
Comparable community asset that we run.
So a cash subsidy for the Gordon Golf Club or Golf Course would be about $288,000.
And the total subsidy, including all
300, including annualized capital costs, it would be about $350,000.
And did council increase its operating subsidy to the golf course by around 55% from the previous year? That was numbers I thought I had.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, the previous year there was lower subsidy because there was additional income.
And I have a question then to possibly Director Ang. Council, and it speaks to Councillor Smith's comment on Greenhall. I think it's a green. I don't know how to say that in Linfield Learning Village. Greenhouse. Council recently approved a small amount of funding to activate an event for our community to enjoy professional music and dance. And I know we looked at Greenhouse. Can you share our experience on trying to access that hall and any other hall for that event? Basically an auditorium with proper seating, acoustics, and a green room. So what were the challenges and what was our experience with that particular site as well?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. That's correct. As part of the Town Hall takeover event that was resolved to be implemented by Council in April 2026, staff have been working with the Arts and Culture Subcommittee to look at prospective venues. So the initial intention was to host that at a council-owned facility. Subject to finalising the scope of that event, which it's broadly understood would include live performance, it became apparent that the multi-purpose range of community halls that council currently owns wouldn't be suitable due to the lack of infrastructure such as lighting and sound equipment and a fixed stage. There has been inquiries made with third-party managed facilities, including the particular one that you mentioned. However, there has been constraints in terms of availability. Also similar with school halls that have been inquired about. They're subject to availability constraints due to school utilisation and it being consumed by school activities during school terms.
So I understand that we actually cannot access a single hall auditorium in Ku-ring-gai unless we go to a private school or a public school, and they won't be able to tell us until November and we can access it for next year. So that is the state of where we're at with putting on a professional performance in Ku-ring-gai. I'd like to move an amendment, please, that I've put forward.
Do you mind reading it out?
Council notes that there is no current identified funding source for the delivery of the Marion Street Arts Centre redevelopment project. I'm calling it an arts centre because it is not just a theatre, the new redevelopment. Council notes that the project has been subject to successive increases in budget estimates, and I've quoted most recently 30.3 million in October 2024. Council notes that the Council's final special rate variation package submitted to IPART does not include funding for the Marion Street Arts Centre redevelopment. So these are as per the original motion. Council confirms that the sale of the Moree Street car park in Gordon would fully fund the development of Marion Street Arts Centre and obtains advice on the most appropriate legal mechanism and sale process to ensure delivery of a public road through the site by October 2026. I have taken from, I'll just read it. Council conduct representative, not opt-in community consultation through an external provider with a budget of $30,000 to inform the cultural facilities plan and the Marion Street redevelopment, including resident preferences and arts and cultural infrastructure in Ku-ring-gai, resident support for the Marion Street Arts Centre redevelopment with detail on the costs and design of the project within the context of community and recreational facilities in Ku-ring-gai, resident support for funding the Marion Street Arts Centre redevelopment through the sale of an asset such as Moree Street Gordon Car Park, could be another one, that's an example. Outcomes to be reported back to Council by December 2026. F, that Council progresses with the budgeted works to preserve the existing DA for the redevelopment, commit to the above steps for financial accountability and community mandate, and implement the recommended guidelines for an OLG capital expenditure review as required for this project.
Okay, do I have a seconder, Councillor Taylor? Councillor Balachandran, would you like to speak?
It is said imitation is the best form of flattery, and I should be tickled that my notice of motion for Norman Griffiths has been replicated, albeit for very different circumstances. No one should be surprised, and I don't think it's emotional, that I'm standing against more procrastination relating to the state of arts and culture in Ku-ring-gai. I'm currently in full-time rehearsals as a musician for a Belvoir theatre production, which will be playing in Surrey Hills, then Canberra, then Melbourne, but not a chance of bringing that story to my own community. One of the applicants for our Stages and Spaces program said she was glad to use our spaces for rehearsals and would love to stage her sold-out shows in Ku-ring-gai, but there's nowhere suitable for her to hire outside private schools, so off she went to NIDA, to the 250-seat theatre. I've been a supporter of arts in Ku-ring-gai. Our ability to share and hear stories, our stories, it is what brings us together as a community, young and old, private and public school, multicultural. It will be quite remarkable if the councillors who voted to spend $20 million on Norman Griffiths, one of 65 ovals, oppose spending $100,000 to save this DA. The original motion concerns me also because of the lack of collaboration that should have informed its development. My fellow ward councillor did not discuss this with me, nor with the Arts and Culture Committee. This motion, the original motion, speaks about process when its development did not necessarily follow that. The original motion also seeks to put an end to the only community infrastructure planned for Gordon Ward. When was the last time we had a public event in Gordon or Killara? There is no strip of shops to activate like Westminster shops. There is no park to activate like Wahroonga Park. There is no village to activate like the Linfield Village Green. There is no showground or community centre to activate like the St Ives Village Green or showground. Coming to heritage, the site is a place of living cultural heritage. For those on council who care about our heritage, heritage is not limited to architecturally interesting homes. It incorporates the lives of people, the legacy of places, and the foundations that existing places and memories serve for future generations of residents. Let's not suffocate the living cultural heritage our community has actually built on the site. The original motion will also end up creating more work and cost prematurely. This is not a capital project that is underway. It is not a project seeking unbudgeted multi-million-dollar capital injection. The current spend is $100,000 with a budget of $500,000 to save a $1.7 million process that we have put in place over the last 13 years. What the motion did do was to raise that we need consistent processes for large capital projects to ensure we have the money and the community mandate for them, which this amendment incorporates. We are refreshing our town planning frameworks, including Kilara's public domain plan, for significant growth in population, along with a cultural facilities plan. We would look absolutely foolish if these strategic processes pointed to the benefit of a cultural and entertainment precinct around Marion Street, and a group of councillors had just shot this down months prior to save $100,000. Cultural infrastructure has received no part of $173 million spent on capital projects in the last 10 years in Ku-ring-gai, which included the NTRA, the Aquatic Centre, St Ives basketball courts, and the Norman Griffiths Oval. I have no problem with this spend. I just think that it should be shared equally into the residents that don't have performance spaces. The original motion also seeks to end the only available performance space that could be made in Ku-ring-gai for the next 5 or 10 or 15 years. We just heard from Director Ang, there are no venue options, none, for a quality performance outside private schools in all of Ku-ring-gai. Would we ask our sporting clubs to hire private school ovals for every one of their competition level games? So many individual residents, not members of any single organisation or club, have written to us with their addresses, with personal reasons. May I have another minute, please?
You may.
Have written to us with personal reasons supporting the redevelopment. I counted 130 emails this afternoon for Marion Street's redevelopment and one against. Our residents want creative economy. Grandparents want to take grandkids somewhere local. Residents want multicultural storytelling. And so many dance, music, theatre and film groups who want to make and share work in their own community simply cannot do so. Scores of organisations, from folk to Kilara Scottish Dance Club to disability support organisations, have written to us. I urge councillors to support this amendment that simply preserves the DA for $100,000 and agrees to seek clear community mandate and a financial plan to build something for our residents that will create beauty and community cohesion for decades and will belong to everyone in Ku-ring-gai.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Balachandran. Councillor Sam Knight, are you speaking to the amendment?
I'll speak to the amendment before foreshadowing with another
Mayor Kay, I beg your pardon, as the secretary.
Oh, sorry, as the secondary. Yeah, my apologies.
Sorry, Councillor.
So would you like to speak, Councillor?
Yes, please. Thank you, Mayor Kay. I actually feel like sometimes I'm the most emotional councillor, but ironically, I feel no emotion at all about Marion Street Theatre. I don't know if I should admit that. But, you know, I respect the desired intent of the original motion. So I believe that the desired intent of that motion was to deliver arts facilities in Ku-ring-gai and to hopefully accelerate the delivery of those arts facilities. The reason I like this amendment is it does pick up some of the good ideas in that motion, particularly the community consultation, which I think is a fantastic idea, Councillor Ward. I'm really supportive of that. I'm also supportive of the existing arts and culture study, which I believe is already underway, and I think that the scope that was described in the original motion should be included in that study. I wish, Councillor Smith, that Greenhalgh Theatre was a realistic alternative. You're right, it is sensational. It's practically just not an alternative for us because of the school constraints, and that is incredibly disappointing and actually counter, I believe, to the intent of the state government and the Department of Education, who are focused on turning their facilities inside out It should be available to us, but is not. The other thing this does is it raises the idea of an asset swap, an idea that we talked about earlier, a sensible, strategic and credible path for funding a new arts centre, not selling assets to pay the bills, but actually selling assets to fund renewal and replacement of those assets. So it's just an idea at this stage to acknowledge. I think it is realistic, and I hope that we can go down that path. I would like us to do it all. I would like us to do that study, to look at all of those facilities, to look for other opportunities for arts and culture venues and facilities, and I would also like us to fund a rebuild of the Arts Centre on Marion Street Theatre.
Okay, now it's your turn, Councillor Sam Knight.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I'll start with a question to the Director Watson through the General Manager. We talk about selling Moree Street car park to fund Marion Street Theatre. What is a realistic time frame for which we can liquidate the asset? Are we talking about this decade or what?
Director Watson.
A relatively simple question through you, Madam Mayor, but quite a complex answer. I see parallels to the process we went through for the Balfour Lane reconstruction down in Linfield, in which case a developer had Coles had a call option over the site and dedicated and constructed a road as part of their DA process. So that is a multi-year, more than 5-year process. You could technically sell the site straight up, but if you dedicated a road first, a road has no value, whereas if you extracted the value, moved it elsewhere on a development site, you would get quite significant value from the road, or what would become a road in that project. So a multi-year process, Councillor Knight, to extract maximum value. But if you just put a for sale sign on it, dedicated a road, you could do it within 12 to 18 months. So it's not an easy funding source, a quick funding source.
Okay, thank you. Now I would like to speak against this amendment. I would also like to foreshadow this amendment with another amendment.
Did you want to disclose what that foreshadow is, or did you want to wait?
Can we just show that later if that comes up? So look, just first of all, some stats. Councillor Balachandran said in her emails 134 1 against. My version of the emails is a bit different. I've got 109 for and 1 against as at 5:30 p.m. this evening. I know that there were other emails circulating, and maybe if you search for LM2, it might pick up those as well, but I don't believe internal discussions within councillors and staff count. Now, out of those 109 emails, what wasn't helpful was that the concerned residents didn't state where they live. So I could only figure out 26 out of those 109, or otherwise 24%, are from the Ku-ring-gai LGA. In terms of themes that these 109 deeply cared about, 51% were concerned about a lack of local arts within the LGA. 30% were concerned about community well-being and cohesion provided by Marion Street Theatre, and 30% were concerned about personal and family connections, whereas 12% mentioned heritage values and 5% mentioned economic or local business. Now, out of that, we can see that the community, or part of the community, clearly cares about Marion Street Theatre for various reasons. But the reason why I oppose this amendment, and why I also oppose the original motion, is that there's, from my point of view, there's just a lot of fluff. Like in the whole act of being frustrated by what happened last month, we've incorporated all sorts of additional words that would not otherwise, if I read the room correctly, have been included as part of a "we'll stop the DA for Marion Street Theatre" motion. So it's got words about, you know, all this stuff about spending $30,000 for yet another study, which we probably would have covered in scope in the community and facility strategy anyway. It's got all these extra words about all sorts of other considerations, half of which we probably would have considered already. And it just becomes a very bloated sort of amendment and a very bloated kind of original motion as well. So what I propose to show, if I get the opportunity further down the line, is something that's a lot more streamlined, that shuts down the DA as it stands right now, but also looks forward to the future. And on that, I'm just going to shut my mouth for now.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Mann-Smith, you've got your light on. Are you speaking on the amendment?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I just, maybe through to the Director of Community, I haven't asked you a question. Are you aware of the Green Lane Theatre?
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes.
Okay, thank you. Are you aware, I'm just reading something at the moment that serves as a dual-use community and educational venue. It's stating here that it's managed in partnership with the Sydney Musical Theatre, which hosts local productions there, and the space is regularly used for community events, music concerts, and has 685 seats.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I've read the promotional material that's available online.
Yep.
The response was provided to me by staff with regards to inquiries they've made with the prospective use of that theatre to host the town hall takeover.
Okay, and that's located at Eaton Road in Linfield, roughly 3.4 kilometres away from Marion Street Theatre.
Yep, through you, Madam Mayor, that's the location of that site, as I understand it.
Thank you. I'll be speaking against this motion. Amendment. Whilst I appreciate what is trying to be done here, and I understand Councillor Balachandran's wishes for this to be put forward, moved on, and continue to throw money at, and continue to leave an asset there that is not being used or could be used somewhere else or better served with something else. I've been on council since 2017. There's been many stages I've supported the Marion Street Theatre in moving forward, and at every stage we couldn't get the funding. And this has been the whole issue. We actually, it gets to the point where it's disappointing. We're bringing people out that are coming out here that are in support of it. And I understand that they're in support of this, and it's an important thing to the community. But the reality that this council can deliver it isn't there. That's the sad part. It's $35 million that we're looking at, and we just can't see fit for it. And I know that it gets played against sports, against arts and culture and so forth, and that's unfair. And it's, as a council here, we're trying to service the greater part of the community. If we could support people into individual things, whether or not it be NASA, whether or not it be or something, it would be fantastic. But the reality is on this, and the reason why I can't support it, is we've got a venue which is 3.4 kilometres away from Marion Street Theatre. We've got, it says that's there for public use, can be used. That's not with the private schools and so forth. And we're going through a crisis at the moment, and we just put on a 29% increase in the ratepayers at Ku-ring-gai. And are we seriously going to sit here tonight after that, putting another lazy $500,000 to it, to continue to support it, where 2017, I'm coming up to long service leave shortly, where we haven't moved. It hasn't moved. All we've done is spend money and do exactly, and I appreciate this is your first term of council and this is what your mandate is. I appreciate all that, but the fact of the matter is it never has been able to kick off. We've had Cheryl Chateau's been one of the biggest supporters. She was mayor at the time with it. She did everything she could possibly do to move it forward. The issue really comes down to how many, what amount are we prepared to spend for what part of the community? Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just, I know I'm out of the order, but
No,
Councillor Smith was not in the room when we talked about green.
Right. We can clarify that when it comes to your turn, if that's
No,
okay.
that's fine. Yeah,
We
no
can do that. Because Councillor Barbara Ward, have you got some questions? Or you're talking on this amendment? Either way.
I did have just some questions. Thank you. Just through you, Madam Mayor, I just wanted to clarify again, what is the point in keeping the DA valid when we don't have money? We didn't have money 13 years ago. Some of the emails that I've received from residents are, you are letting the building rot. Do something about the building. People are concerned that we have left an infrastructure as important as that to rot. That is one of the biggest things. So my question again is, why are we keeping the DA alive? And do you think we will have the money in the next 12, 24 months to build it?
You asking that question
to whoever.
General Manager?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, in the material that we put out as a late paper today, it did identify that that the strategic value in keeping the DA alive is largely a matter of keeping the options open. So it does keep the option open for that DA. That's the main reason. And as we touched on before, if you were to lodge another DA in the future, you may not get the same result. So that's the rationale for keeping the DA alive.
So what would be the biggest problem? What would be the biggest problem if we went back to get another DA? I just want the community to understand that when there's no money, there's no money. We're giving them a false hope. We're letting a building just denigrate the way it is. We need to do something.
Can you just do one question at a time, Councillor Ward, and give the General Manager opportunity to answer?
I'm sorry.
Madam Mayor, I don't know what the question is.
Councillor Ward, can you repeat the question, if you don't mind?
What would be the problem if we didn't keep the DA alive and we were to go back in 12 months' time, 24 months' time, whether we sell Morris Street or whatever, and have the money and do a DA? What would be the biggest problem?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If you are asking what would be the difficulties in getting a development approval, I'll refer that to Director Watson.
Through you, Madam Mayor. As was alluded to earlier, the vision for that town centre has changed significantly. When we did consultation on the DA, and I can only speak from the perspective of the applicant, I'm assisting preparing a DA, not the assessment of the DA. But there were significantly less immediate neighbours. There has been a number of unit developments in that precinct that have been completed in the intervening time and certainly occupied. So where we had originally there would have been a couple of houses on the south and the west. They are now apartment buildings on all of those adjoining blocks. So there is significantly more immediate neighbours. There is significantly more demand on on-street parking. The DA is unable to provide all of its required parking on site. The approved DA has 9 spaces on site and requires somewhere between, depending on time of day usage, somewhere between, I think, 32 and 53, somewhere in that order, car spaces. Now that's a combination of what's available in the Colworth Avenue car park, what's available in Marion Street, what's available on Colworth Avenue, and in some cases requires change to parking restrictions, time limits, things like that. And also, it's my understanding that the use of external car parking actually leads to limitations on hours of operation. So you would see the theatre shut. What I would say is as an applicant, unduly early, simply to not cause trouble with the neighbours, and the number of neighbours has dramatically increased. So all of the arguments that we made at the time may not hold anymore simply because of the weight of additional residents who live right next door.
Can I ask another question? Just following on from that, so we would be disadvantaging the people who are now there who were not there previously if we continue with the existing DA.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'll use an analogy. Admittedly, the theatre hasn't been built yet, but you don't move it next to an airport or a pub and then complain about the noise of the late night theatre or the overflight. People have bought into that precinct, knowing that council was planning at the very least to develop that theatre. If you were to change the ground rules, you could reasonably expect them to change their position. And we can't assume that their views haven't changed in the intervening time either.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. Councillor Alec Taylor.
Thank you, Mayor Kay. I just have a question actually through the General Manager to the relevant director, probably Director Watson. Do you think it's likely that we would get much change from $30 million for a new arts centre anywhere? Isn't it true that if we want a new arts centre, it's likely to cost tens of millions of dollars in almost any location?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I appreciate the generality of the question. It would depend on scope, but you would not get a lot of change or a lot of building for $30 million, no, Councillor.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Indu Balachandran.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to clarify to Councillor Smith, who was not in the room when Director Ang spoke of our challenges accessing that theatre in Linfield Learning Village. So basically, to paraphrase, and feel free to correct me, Director Ang, that theatre is simply not available to the public, although it says on the website that it is. When we made inquiries about accessing it, the school basically said it was not available and that it might be available next year, but there's no certainty of it. But Director Ang, perhaps you can repeat your comments on our inquiries and the dead end that it led to, because it sits within a school environment. For you to hear from Director Ang, or did I explain that to you sufficiently? Just you were away. Thank you. Can I also move that we go to vote? We've had 2 for and 2 against.
Do you want to put that to the vote?
Procedural motion, yeah.
Okay, we'll put that to the vote. We've had 2 for, 2 against. Procedural. Who is for? For the procedural motion to go to the vote. Okay, all those in favour? Councillor Smith, Wheatley, Councillor Devlin, Councillor Taylor, Councillor Ward, Councillor Balchandran, Councillor Nye, Councillor Pettit, Councillor Spencer. I might make that unanimous. Okay, so we'll go to the vote that we are putting this motion forward. So we'll now put it forward. Amendment, sorry, now I'm confusing myself. We'll put the amendment up on the screen. So all those in favour of the amendment, that is Councillor Taylor, Councillor Balachandran. All those against, Councillor Smith, Councillor Wheatley, Councillor Devlin, Councillor Ward, Councillor Nye, Councillor Pettit, Councillor Spencer, Councillor Kay. That is lost. We will now move to the original. Oh, sorry, Councillor Sam Nye, you would.
Oh yes, I previously foreshadowed with another amendment, and I asked that that amendment be brought up now. So it's a slimline version of relatively slim. Okay, so I'll just read it out. Council notes that the cost of Marion Street Theatre has risen from 6 mil in June 2018 to 30.3 in October 2024, with the present day estimate feasibly reaching the high 30 mil or low 40 mil. Council notes it cannot fund the theatre from rates, borrowings or asset sales this decade. Funding may arise next decade, but by then, the current design will likely be non-compliant with building, environmental, accessibility and health standards, making any spend to preserve the current DA redundant. C. Council notes existing opportunities to support the arts sector through its Stages and Spaces program across 10 venues in the LGA. D. Regarding theatre, Council continues to explore opportunities for larger and potentially more cost-effective venues at Gordon, Turramurra and Linfield. each with a broad range of businesses to complement pre- and post-performance activities. E. As such, Council will not carry out further expenditures solely to preserve or extend DA 14420, with future decisions regarding the provision of community space in Killara to be considered as part of Council's community and cultural facility strategy, update commencing next financial year.
Do we have a seconder?
Any seconds?
Councillor Wheatley?
Sure. Thank you.
Councillor Knight, would you
appreciate
like
that.
to speak?
Yep,
on
I
your
would.
amendment?
I want to begin not in Killara, but in Penrith. In 1977, the Penrith Q Theatre turned an old Railway Institute building into a 126-seat thrust stage theatre, and the community fell in love with it. Over 3 decades, it staged everything from Lock Up Your Daughters to The Sentimental Bloke. Under founder Doreen Warburton, OBE, and later directors including Helmut Bakaitis, now best known as the architect in The Matrix, it brought professional theatre to a community that had never had a company of its own. But a converted building has its limits. So when the state and Penrith Council expanded the Joan Sutherland Performing Arts Centre, the Q didn't cling to its 4 walls. It lobbied to join something better. In 2005, it moved into a purpose-built theatre and has thrived ever since, now drawing more than 300,000 people a year. Because a beloved theatre is not its building, it is its people, and they can be carried somewhere better. Closer to home, our own theatre didn't begin as a theatre at all. The Killara Hall Company built a plain hall on Marion Street in 1906. It later became this council's Soldiers Memorial Hall, and only in 1965 did Alexander Archdale turn it into a community theatre. It has been deeply loved ever since. But love does not change the laws of physics or the building code. At its peak in 1980, that auditorium seated as many as 400. Apply today's fire safety, accessibility, and comfort standards to the very same 4 walls, and the proposed renovation now seats just 249 in the main theatre. No budget changes the footprint. The Killara site is capacity constrained and always will be. And the budget is the part we cannot look away from. This project has risen from 6 to 30.3 in a number of years, and with today's estimate reaching the high 30s, it's possible that, well, it's 5 to 7 times the original cost, just to renovate a 249-seat theatre on a site that can never hold more. Yes, we have spent some money on this project, but that is the worst possible reason to spend 30 or 40 million more, especially when we cannot fund this from rates, borrowings, or asset sales this decade. And by the time we could, the design will no longer meet building, accessibility, and environmental standards. We would be paying today to preserve a DA that is redundant before it is built. So let me be clear about what this motion or this amendment does. It does not turn its back on the arts, as this council already supports 10 venues through its Stages and Spaces program. Instead, this motion commits us to explore larger, more affordable, purpose-built options at Gordon, Turramurra, and or Linford, and to plan Killara's future properly through our community and cultural facilities strategy next financial year. And this is why it matters to me. 3 generations of one family, the Blackslots, have performed on the Marion Street stage, and a 4th is on the way as we speak. I want that child to have a stage, and God willing, a 5th, 6th, and 7th generation after them. But we do not honour the loyalty with a theatre we cannot fund this decade, one the building code will outgrow before it opens. We honour it by doing what Penrith did, carrying a much-loved company into a venue built for generations not yet born. So the real choice tonight is not a stage now versus none at all. It is an unfundable aging room versus a future worthy of the people of who will fill it. So let's choose the future, and I commend this amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Nye. Councillor Wheatley is the seconder. Would you like to speak?
No.
Reserve your right. Okay. Councillor Alec Taylor.
Thank you, Mayor Kay. I'm going to speak really briefly on this because we've been doing this for a long time tonight. I have not yet given up on the idea of funding Marion Street Arts Centre this decade. I understand that Councillor Nye is ready to. I do want to just take exception to one specific element of this amendment, which I'm speaking against, and that is that bigger is better. That is not always the case with a community theatre. In fact, there are many successful smaller community theatres across New South Wales. And really, that's all I'm going to say. So I'm opposed to this amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Indu Balachandran.
I am also speaking against this amendment for all the reasons I spoke to previously. I also want to note that point C is actually inaccurate because our arts sector has told us that our Stages and Spaces program across 10 venues, they can't actually put on any professional shows in those spaces.
Okay. Councillor Pettit.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, I'm the last man standing since 2013 when we shut the building. Oof. Yes, that's my fault. There you go. Back then, it was a run-down building. It was unsafe for performances, unfortunately. We did have a plan to build it. That was based on a certain funding model. And should I revisit what that model was? That was to sell the 2 bowling clubs. That would have paid for the theatre at that particular point in time. However, council chose to go down a different path with those bowling clubs, thus keeping the bowling clubs and sacrificing Marion Street because there was no funding once those bowling clubs were kept. And you are right, with the arts, it doesn't matter about the size of the venue, it is what is brought to the venue. I'm going away in a couple of weeks' time and I looked up Bathurst and I thought, what's on in Bathurst? I looked at their centre. It's fairly large, they've got a couple of 600 and also smaller ones. But the programs were a little bit different. There was a comedy company, Sydney Comedy Company performing there. And also on another night, you had various bands doing Roy Orbison and the Everly Brothers tributes. So again, same location, different type of performances. So that sort of intrigued me. I said, I'll go along there and I'll see these performances, see what they've got there. Again, the arts really shouldn't be tied to one location. We can get more locations. And Councillor Balachandran, you are right. We have nowhere that's acoustically appropriate. You can't really use the town hall because it's a big box with nothing more than 4 walls and a roof. It just doesn't work for the arts. It would be nice to actually see something built. But the 2 questions are when and how much. And a quick question through Director Watson just to finish off because we've had a long night. Would it be more cost effective if we were not pursuing a standalone building and it was incorporated within a town centre redevelopment for a performing arts location?
I don't know that I can actually answer that, Councillor. It really depends on the nature of the space you wanted to build. A lot of the early town centres work relied on mixed-use spaces rather than a theatre space. So it really depends on the scope of what you're trying to provide.
So expanding on that, the mixed-use space is the most sort of cost-effective way of getting a performance location. Would you agree?
Through you, Madam Mayor, you would get more usage out of it, but it may not necessarily tick the boxes for people who wanted to do traditional theatre.
Are there any other speakers on this amendment? All right, if there isn't, I will put that to the vote. All those in favour of the amendment? It's Councillor Smith, Councillor Wheatley, Councillor Devlin, Councillor Ward, Councillor Nye, Councillor Pettit, Councillor Spencer. All those against? Councillor Taylor, Councillor Balachandran, Councillor Kay. That is lost. Now the amendment will become... Oh, sorry. So this will now become the motion. All those in favour? Councillor Smith, Councillor Wheatley, Councillor Devlin, Councillor Ward, Councillor Nye, Councillor Pettit, Councillor Spencer. All those against? Councillor Taylor, Councillor Balachandran, Councillor Kay. That is carried. Okay, we will now move on to business with notice. Sorry? Oh, so business without, did I say with? Okay, I think it's been a long night. Business without notice. Is there any business without notice subject to clause 9.3 of the Code of Meeting Practice? Councillor Taylor.
Mayor Kay, I actually do have some urgent business.
Can I ask councillors not to pack up while Councillor Taylor?
I beg your pardon. So, and perhaps this motion will not pass, I'm not sure, but I would like to move the council move into a closed meeting to consider a confidential legal matter as business without notice.
Is that matter urgent?
Yes.
Okay,
absolutely.
well, I will, would you like to move that it's
I would
urgent?
like to move it, yes.
Okay, I will second that. All those in favour that it's urgent? That looks like that is Councillor Smith, Councillor Wheatley, Councillor Devlin, Councillor Taylor, Councillor Ward, Councillor Balachandran, Councillor Nye, Councillor Pettit, Councillor Kay. Those against? Councillor Spencer. That is carried. So the next part is, can I have a motion that we move into closed session? Moved by Councillor Taylor, seconded by Councillor Balachandran. All those in favour? That looks like that. Spencer, are you hand up? No. Okay, so all those in favour, Councillor Smith, Councillor Wheatley, Councillor Devlin, Councillor Taylor, Councillor Ward, Councillor Balachandran, Councillor Nye, Councillor Pettit, Councillor Kay. Those against? Councillor Spencer. That is carried. Now, if I could just ask members of the public and press if they could leave the chamber, and I'll ask for council staff to Council resolved in closed confidential session. The motion is that the action set out in the note initialed by the Mayor during the meeting be implemented and reported to Council. Moved by Councillor Alec Taylor, seconded by Councillor Indu Balachandran, and the vote was unanimous. Okay, now that leads us to the conclusion of the meeting. There being no further business, I'd like to thank councillors and staff. Also like to thank members of the public for their attendance. The webcast of this meeting will be available on the council website and minutes will be published within the next 2 working days. I declare the meeting closed at 10:18 p.m. Thank you.